in the morning. No, I'm joking. King, we won't go until 5 in the morning. So let's save some time on that right now. So right, I think everybody can hear me, and you can also hear the king. And yeah, we're just gonna get cracking. Today we are looking at something that I was inspired to do by by our special guest right now on the show, TKM, the King's Monologue. I think a lot of us will know who he is, but just for the purposes of playing this when this video plays back, when it's not alive anymore and people can just watch it, rewatch it. You are. I just want the audience to know that you are. I don't know you intimately. You are someone who I'm actually just speaking to for the first time. But you are on YouTube on the space that is the internet. You are one of the biggest and most credible voices on Black history, specifically the Africanicity, the blackness of the ancient Egyptians. I remember when I came across one of your videos at first, and I can't remember exactly what video it was. It was probably a reconstruction of one of the pharaohs, and I was just blown away by the reconstruction. I thought that, okay, wow, we actually have people out there, people from the diaspora, who are putting real faces, believable faces on these statues, on the pharaohs of the past and the kings and queens of the past. So that blew me away. I started watching more and more of your content on YouTube. Found you on TikTok as well when I was on TikTok for a very short period, and from then on, and that also coincided with what I was doing in terms of setting up Trillblack, and I was just blown away by lots and lots of your work. You've brought credibility, and you've brought an oomph to the discussion of the blackness of the ancient Egyptians. Yourself and Quelimika and a few others. But I mean, when you came into this space, I think that this space has been blessed for your work. So if you've not come across the King's Monologue yet, you need to. You need to go. Like I said when I interviewed Quelimika, if you've not come across the King's Monologues content yet, you need to go and binge watch. Forget Netflix. Forget whatever else it is. Hulu. I don't know what any of these other apps. Amazon Prime. Go and binge watch the King's Monologues channel. It's absolutely brilliant. So I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna let you introduce yourself in however many words you want to, and then I'm gonna get into the questioning. So if it's a hi, if it's a hello, if it's whatever it is, I'll let you do that. But before I do that, I want to say thank you to the one and only Black Rampage 2, who put respect on his name, 2. Not just Black Rampage 2, he's dropped us a super chat. He says, "Mandem!" exclamation
My
marks.
guy.
Yeah, he's an OG, he's a real one. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate that super chat from you, Black Rampage 2. All right, King, the floor is yours just to briefly introduce yourself.
Oh, well, thank you for the very kind introduction. I am very humbled by it. And obviously, a massive shout out to Black Rampage as well. He's a massive supporter of my channel. So, those donations go a long way, and just actually being here on the live stream, there's so many regular faces, it's really appreciated. But yeah, in terms of your intro, what can I say? I'm not gonna add more to it. I'm just gonna say I'm really humbled by it, and I thank you very much that the work that I'm doing is being appreciated in the space. I think the only thing that came to mind when you were speaking is actually that for me, this journey has been an evolution as well, in terms of where I started and where I am now. One of the things I always said to myself is if what I'm doing stops making sense, because one of the things I was very keen on not doing was falling into a dogma in terms of what I do, in terms of my beliefs, and saying, when you just become really stubborn. And I think that's one of the things that's happened in Egyptology, where many of these professors have entered the trade or the industry, for want of a better word, and they've probably gone in there with best intentions, but gone in there with a certain belief system. And then when they've faced with evidence that have contradicted that, they've fallen back on their beliefs as opposed to falling into the data. And that's one of the things I didn't want to do. I was always like, you know what, when this stops making sense, or if it stops making sense, or if anything, and all that's happened over the time that I've been doing my research is that it just makes more and more sense every day. Every day it just becomes so much easier to see the links between ancient Kemet and its Africanity. And I'm so glad you chose this topic, because this is probably one of the strongest links that the African continent has with ancient Kemet. And this kind of proves itself. So yeah, I've not got much more to add than that. But thank you for having me on your channel. I love your channel as well. I think you're very aware of that. I think you're doing a fantastic job. And yeah, it's a pleasure that you've invited me on here. That's it, really.
Well, that's a good place to stop because, listen, my channel next to yours is cringe. Let's not even compare. We're
Don't be
working
silly.
we're working towards
Don't be silly.
we're working towards their
Comrades.
levels, so
Your
thank you.
thumbnails are already better than mine, so don't
Well, that's
listen,
that's
man,
funny you
don't
say
come
that.
with that.
Funny you say that because I literally, when I'm coming up with a thumbnail, I'm literally thinking, let me see what's TKM done. What's he done on this topic? Has he done anything similar to this topic? Let me see what he let me see what he's saying. His thumbnail say so. No, each one teach one, as they say. So anyway, thank you though, thank you. Okay, right. Let's get straight into it. This will be a discussion about the ancient Egyptians and their hair. Okay, one of the biggest things that the proves what people like myself and the King's Monologue say about ancient Egypt is their hair. Now, I've done that sentence in that way because I don't want to give too much away. I don't want to give away what our position is. I just want what we're going to talk about tonight to speak for itself. But one of the things that proves what we talk about when we talk about the ancient Egyptians, one of the things that proves us right is the hair of the Egyptians. Now, this therefore will take the form of, we're going to talk about that, but before that I just want us to explore why the king has weight, has clout in this area, before we go into a video of his that I'm going to play, and he will, whenever he wants, he will interrupt to explain whatever. And I have some questions on that video itself. It's about 25 minutes long, and I will be pausing. I have the questions pre-prepared, and I will be pausing at those pre-prepared moments to ask these, what I think are very insightful questions about his work. And his work, specifically speaking, is the video titled "There Were No Crowns in Egypt." I think that's what the video is titled, King. If I'm not
Something like that.
mistaken,
Yeah.
yes, right. So we're going to be going through that video, and the King is going to be taking us through that video. But first of all, I want to ask you this, King. It is my curiosity: how did you come to start this work? What was it that led you down? I said this to Kweli Mika. We all have things to do, like a bucket list. I want to do this. I want to do this. I've been meaning to write this book. I've been meaning to take that trip. But what was it that finally made you say, right, that's it, I'm starting this channel, I'm going to start doing this?
I think I it's not been on my bucket list ever to have a YouTube channel that does African history. It's weird because it ticks so many of my boxes in terms of things that I did want to achieve. So it's weird that it didn't cross my mind. But I think the thing that actually prompted me to start the channel was actually just the changes and the advancements in technology, which kind of left me with. So actually, let me give credit where credit's due. I remember just before I started the channel, a few months before I started the channel, I did stumble across Mr. Imhotep.
Okay.
And I loved his shorts started coming up on my feed. And I was like, it re-galvanized me, because I've always had my library. You saw when I was on camera a minute ago, I've got a big library of books that I'm always adding to. I'm obviously big into my Black history and whatever. But I loved I'd been a subscriber to Home Team History for the longest time. So I was well aware of his work, but there was something about Mr. Imhotep's work that really struck me. His shorts were brilliant. They had that music, and they come up with the, you know what I'm talking about. His shorts, and they come up with the fact. So I was like, damn, this is an evolution in the way that people are presenting African history. It even got me reinterested back in, you know, stuff that you obviously know, you take for granted, and then you just move on. Oh, well, the world will never know. I guess ancient Egypt's black and the world will never know. That was kind of like, you know, where that's where I was at that stage. And then I come across Mr. Imhotep stuff, and I was like, damn, that was strong, and it was convincing. And I bet you that's impacted a few people who didn't know. And I thought to myself, why aren't you impacting anyone? You know a lot about this subject. Why? Who are you influencing?
Mm.
And then to add to that, he did a reconstruction, and I was like, oh damn, I haven't seen a reconstruction done. You know, not one that hasn't been commissioned. The last black reconstruction I could remember was the one commissioned by National Geographic, like 15 years ago. Do you understand what I mean? So it's a long time ago. And since then, obviously, Egyptology had been rolling out all of their crap. And Mr. Imhotep done a fantastic reconstruction. I think the first one I saw that he did was, I wish I could remember who it was.
Might have been Khufu,
It was an
maybe.
old kingdom. So it was an old kingdom. It
Mm.
was an old kingdom. I can't remember, but it was good. I tell you that much. It was an old kingdom.
Yeah.
Somewhere in that old kingdom he did. Maybe Sahura or something. I can't remember who it was, but it was good. I was like, damn, this is good. This is good. And what obviously hit me was that, you know, it's almost like when the ancestors talked to you, it was like, you should be doing this, man. Like, you've got the talent to do this. Like, everything I'm not going to take you through an anthology of my previous experience in different areas, but needless to say, I have a lot of skill in the area of CGI, digital, photo editing, photo creation. All of that stuff is my skill set. Those are things that I didn't need to learn for the channel. I knew these things already. So it's kind of like with that, and then the advent of AI, which allowed me to generate images on the fly, which I could then borrow features from, because that's a lot of my process. That's what a lot of it leans on, the ability to generate images on the fly, which is something you couldn't do before. You know, everything's copyrighted. You know, the ability to just create image that's not copyrighted and then use that as a basis to then add stuff and change stuff. It made it very, very feasible. And yeah, that's it. I know that's a long story long, but that was it. There was a series. I have to give massive props to Mr. Imhotep, because he provided a lot of inspiration for what became the King's Monologue. Yeah, and then it kind of like, I just started with a few different topics that I was covering. I did my first reconstruction of King Tut, and it goes viral on TikTok, and I was like, okay, well, this is it then. Let's go.
Wow.
You know?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Wow. See, when you mentioned the fact that you've got background in digital art and stuff like that, that makes complete sense, because well, my missus was even saying it today. I don't know what it was she was looking at. Probably one of your reconstructions, and she just said casually, he must have a background in digital stuff and in photography or whatever, that kind of a skill set. So it's funny that you should say that. You said you don't want to give me an anthology. You don't have to give me an anthology, but specifically, you sound to me like a restless soul. You sound just like myself, because I've heard you say, 'cause I'm a complete restless soul. I can't be in one thing, one job, one house. I've moved around all my life as well. As a child, I was always moving around. So I've just grown up as a restless soul. So you sound exactly like that to me. I heard you say before that you've got teaching experience. Can you take us through that? Like, it has, and specifically, like, has teaching helped you? Because sorry to say, there are lots and lots of us doing this on YouTube, and I'm not disrespecting anybody, but you come across specifically, particularly as a skilled communicator, as not just you know, you carry yourself properly. So I mean, I just want to shout out to Black Rampage whilst I say this. Black Rampage too. He loves the term mandem. Britain is a small island, he says. $10 super chat. Britain is a small island. Mandem not related. Kapruki did an excellent video on Egyptian hair too. He's a mandem as well. Yeah, he is. I've heard Kapruki's voice, and yeah, he's a mandem as well. But you know, sophisticated mandem. So you sound like a sophisticated mandem. You know, what is your background specifically, but not too specifically? You don't have to give us too many specifics. But yeah, just fill us in that.
Yeah.
background noise.
I'll give you a light touch. Yeah.
Yeah.
So first of all, yeah, I totally agree with Black Rampage there. Kapruki's video on hair was amazing, and actually that kind of I'm not sure if you asked this question, but in terms of producing this video that we're about to watch, this video was the result of a number of videos that I had done in the run up. So a number of live streams where the data had just been collating. So I'd done a number of live streams, a number of videos about Queen Tea and Thuya and Yuya, and I'm constantly touching on this hair topic. I was talking about, Chebe powder and its use in Chad, and it was just like as I was doing these videos, I was amassing this massive amount of data on African hair processes, and that's what led me to doing the documentary. And the irony is, literally, I think a week before my documentary was finished, and it took me like about 3 months to make the documentary, Kapruki did a video and he covered a load of the topics that I was gonna do, and I was just over the moon when he did it because it took so much it took so much weight off my shoulders because I hadn't released anything for a long time in the production of this video. And it's like that's happened on more than one occasion where it feels like Kapruki's just read my mind and produced the content that I was about to produce. So yeah, I love that guy. He's actually one of my earliest Patreon supporters as well. So yeah, massive shout out to Kapruki. Sorry, the question that you asked me about my background. Yes, I'm a qualified teacher, qualified a long time ago in 2004. Became the youngest head of department in London a
Wow.
year and a half later. Yeah. So that was nice. That was a nice little moniker to have. So yeah, did well there. And then I went out to teach in the Middle East a couple of years later, and stayed there for 3 years. So yeah, I love teaching, and it's a profession that I would have stayed in had I not been a restless soul, like you just said there. I can't be employed. I'm effectively unemployable because I have to be doing my own thing. So I've always done my own thing outside of that. In terms of my background in photography and digital imagery, CGI, these are always things that I've pursued personally. So it's not things that I didn't need any qualifications in them. One of the things that I did to basically sustain myself was to run a media agency, which I did for 12 years. So I founded a media agency, and a lot of my work in that was around those fields of photography and digital imagery and manipulation, etc., etc., etc. So I became very skilled in that area. So that's a kind of like a very quick overview of where some of the skill set kind of leads in.
Wow, wow. You said 3 months to make that video. Do you know what it actually shows? Because you watch that video as we will do
Thanks.
later tonight, and I was going through the comments on it, and I was just looking because I was troll fishing. I was going to say, what are the trolls going to say about this completely A-star video? What are they going to say about this video? And I think I found one guy who said, well, the DNA says this, so whatever. I was like, yeah, okay. So you're just gonna pretend you've not watched 30 minutes of solid information that you've never heard before, and you're gonna just subsume everything under, well, the DNA. It's like it was just. But anyway, there was just. But I noticed that as well. I just want to say this. Have you noticed that when a video, we all have a sort of how do I say this? We all have a particular. We have standards. So when you're putting out video, sometimes you put out a video and you think, oh, it's not really my best, but I'll just put it out anyway, just whatever. And now from on the receiving end, I don't think oh, that one was, but I think they're all brilliant. But you, as a creator yourself with standards, you might think that. Now, what I want to ask you is, with this video, have you noticed? And what this is one of the ways I gauge myself that I've done a good job on the video. Okay, have you noticed there's barely any negative comments on that video? Did you troll through the video comments to see like what the trolls got to say?
Yeah, I have noticed. I wouldn't use that as a gauge for whether or not a video is good or not. I I would use that as a gauge for how contentious the topic is and whether or not it's worth people. It's weird because it's a very thorough video. I love the video, by the way, and I also love the fact that most of the research in there is original. Diop planted the seed. He gave us the data regarding the Rwandans and Amasunzu and gave us those fantastic images that which we compared to the Kapresh, which will be the basis of the video. But aside from that, nearly everything in that video, including my research on Headrests, is entirely original. No one's done it before. So that's a massive, like, it does make me very proud. I am going to turn that video into a book. I think it deserves a book.
Wow.
So that's definitely one of the things that I'm going to do.
Wow.
Because it deserves a book, so it needs to be done. And I'm adding to it, by the way, as well. So that video's probably got about 1/3 or 25% of the data that'll be required for a book, because there's so much more to this topic that needs to be added. But just going back to the comment thing, I get what you mean, but sometimes you do a really good video and it's so good it gets trolled. Do you understand what I mean?
Right,
so it's kind of weird. Yeah, it's so sometimes it's so good, it strikes such a nerve that it gets trolled. So it's almost like, how contentious is the subject? And what I mean is, in a subject like hair and crowns, come on, the centers, they're not even gonna click on that. They've got nothing. You know, the moment they get into it and they're 5 minutes in, they're gonna realize, okay, I'm beat. I'm not even gonna bother with this one.
Yeah.
You know, but if you do a subject like, you know, were the Egyptians black, and you could be doubly as thorough as I was in this video, you're gonna get trolled immensely. People are gonna come and say stuff that they know has been answered in the video and still say it. So it's like, yeah, no, I get what you're saying. It is nice to have a video like that. But I haven't seen the the rule guide for what makes a troll a troll. If that makes sense.
That makes sense.
You know,
My suspicion is that I think you're right. I think you are partially right on that. If it depends on the contentiousness of the subject and the title and the thumbnail and whatnot. But I will say, what I've noticed is when a video is packed with I don't know what it is. Just it looks and sounds professional, airtight. What you're saying is brilliant. It flows well. I find that, and that video particularly is littered with sources, Caucasian sources. Academic, rich with academia. So what I tend to find is that they don't really have. I really believe that this fight has already been won, and I think the next stage is Hollywood, is getting the popular culture, Hollywood, to put their money where their mouth is and stop trolling us with Cleopatra, you know, and actually come out with more things. I'm hearing talk of Will Smith in a video about what's his name, the Nubian pharaohs that invaded in the 25th dynasty. I'm hearing talk about that. Yes, thank you, Pai and Pianki. Yes, so I'm hearing talk of that. Let's see it. That's why I think the next thing is, because that will really cause some heads to oh my goodness, people are going to be put on suicide watch when stuff like that starts to come out.
Yeah, see, my mindset is screw Hollywood, and I know that's gonna sound really crazy to you, but it really is my mindset. I really feel like I mean, if it happens, that's fine, but you know, also, I'm not sure how old you are. I'm not gonna ask you how old you are, but you have to understand, I lived through the 90s, yeah. And when we're talking about the 90s, we're talking about a time where black people were far ahead than they are now. Ironically, a lot of people don't realize that.
I've said that. Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine. But I was gonna say, in the early 90s, black people were well ahead than we are now in terms of the amount of respect we had, in terms of the amount of autonomy, in terms of how vocal we were, in terms of how much ownership we had over our cinema and stuff like that. So when I was growing up in the early 90s, and I grew up on a very steady diet of Spike Lee movies, bit of John Singleton, not quite the same, but you know, so my view was always, when I'm an adult, I'm gonna watch nothing but black films. And even the films that weren't produced like wholly by black people, things like Coming to America, people, you got to understand, like, as a black person growing up in the 90s, you could watch nothing but black cinema all day.
Mm, mm,
You know, we have definitely devolved since then.
mm,
And it's obviously very sad to see, and I don't want to be depressing. So the reason I raise that is because that's why I say screw Hollywood, is
mm.
because why are we relying on Hollywood? Even like everyone was so happy about Panther. It's like, well, that must be your generation, because anyone from the 90s about Panther was like, I
Yes.
just saw Panther as a movie that was made by white people about
Yes.
black people. That's not
Yes.
ownership. That
Mm,
didn't mean nothing to me.
mm,
If Spike Lee is directing and producing it, now we're talking. Yeah.
mm, mm.
Now we're talking. This is a black movie that's doing well. Don't give me some Kevin Feige movie and put a black cast there and then expect me to be turning up to the cinema in a flipping dashiki. Like, I ain't feeling that. I'm just being real with
They
you.
were clowning
You know,
us
I'm
with
not.
that.
I'm
They
not.
were clowning us with that, trying to make that go viral. It was like, I'm a '90s baby too, so
Come
I
on.
lived through the '90s, um, and
I'm an 80s baby, by the way, just to be
right,
clear. But I
right,
lived
right,
through
right,
the
right,
90s. I was
right.
I was I
So
was a,
so
a young man in the 90s. You know.
so so you're probably slightly older than me then, because I was born right as the Berlin Wall was coming down. I'm not gonna go into any detail, but I'm not
Oh
gonna
no,
give
it's
any
fine. I
specific date.
remember that vividly
Right, right,
on
right.
the
So
news.
that's the era we're talking
Oh
about that
man, we
I
got to
was
talk about
born.
the malls in the Berlin Wall, but we'll do that another day.
About the what? About the what?
About the malls in the Berlin Wall, but we'll do that
Wow. Oh my God.
another
Okay, don't
day.
give anything away, because
Yeah.
please don't give anything away here, because I want to see that video. I want to see what you're cooking. Don't
Oh,
give
that's
anything
not a
away,
video.
please.
That is a very, very deep conversation. I've been getting revelations recently, but I'm not going to
Wow.
go into that right now. Been getting
Wow.
very deep revelations about our history in Europe.
Wow.
And yes, it is linked to the Berlin Wall. It does go that recently. But yeah, anyway, carry on.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay, so that's the era I was born. Berlin Wall was just falling down, and I'm born in that period. So I wasn't as old as you. So really, properly speaking, I'm a noughties baby more than a '90s baby. But I've got very strong memories of the '90s, and I remember growing up, and I remember looking over my sister's shoulders and my mom's shoulders, and seeing things that seeing things on TV just casually black, like you said, Hollywood. This recent thing. I remember a time when Blade was like, no one batted an eyelid that Blade is a Marvel character. He's black. His name's Blade. That was there. I remember when Tyler Perry.
Standard.
People are talking about Tyler Perry now as if Tyler Perry and um there were some great
Yeah.
movies done by black directors, done by black Hollywood. I don't know what you want to call it, Bloodywood, whatever. But that I remember growing up, and people now want to talk about whenever a quote unquote black film's out, as if
Yeah.
they've turned it into this thing. I've said this recently, and I'm saying it more and more. I think the world, like you said, I think it's strange to say, but I actually think things are getting more racist in a in a weird way.
Why do you
Like,
think that's strange? That is as obvious as the day is. That's very obvious statement. It's definitely getting more racist, but you also have to remember the world's getting more belligerent as well. So people are missing that as well. Like if you grew up in the 90s, okay,
mm,
you're not being born into a world that is steeped in war like our current world. Yes,
no,
there was the Gulf War.
mm.
Yeah. So yes, there was the Gulf War. And yes, before the Gulf War, I guess the last major war was the Vietnam War, the Cold War before that. It's kind of you kind of like the world's kind of littered with these scattered events. We've been in a situation of perpetual war for the last 30 years. A lot of people don't realize that this world is constantly in war. Like there's war right now in
Mm,
Libya. I'm not going to start going into the politics
yeah,
of it all,
yeah,
but Libya, Iraq, Syria, um, Afghanistan, even some parts of Somalia. We're talking about perpetual wars, never-ending wars that just keep going on and on. Bombs that keep exploding, Israel, Lebanon, etc., etc. So you live in a world that has gotten far more belligerent, and that is by design. Okay, and a part of that design is the fueling of separatism. You know, you have to create tribalism, you have to create, so racism has been on the up in one direction for the past 30 years, and I've witnessed that. You know, I've witnessed this world get, systematically worse day by day, and obviously people outside of witnessing it won't feel it. Do you understand what I mean? It's kind of like,
Yeah.
well, if someone who's young,
Yeah.
they see war as something that is really normal.
Yeah.
They were
Yeah.
born into war. It's like, oh, what should we do? Well, I guess we should drop some bombs in him.
Yeah.
I grew up in a era where diplomacy was normal. It might not have been what they did, but you kind of had these characters, these major characters that everyone knew their name. It was Mother Teresa, who turned out to be a bit of a fraud, but there you go. Mother
Yeah. Yeah.
Teresa, Desmond Tutu, Nelson Mandela, Princess Diana. These world renowned diplomats and peacekeepers. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Where there's kind of a difference in terms of the way that they approach the world. And obviously, that's not to mention all of the leaders in Africa. I'm not going to go into that. But the point that I'm making is that that world is gone. It's not we're not in the era of peacemakers anymore. We're in the era of warmongers. And racism goes hand in hand with that.
I'm reading the comments and I'm seeing RJ McKenzie. Shout out to you. He says, "Divide and conquer." I think
Indeed.
it's definitely. They say the fish rots from the head down. I think there's definitely a concerted agenda from the very top. I won't mention any names or anybody, any class or whatever. But there's an agenda from the elite class, let's say, to divide, because I don't think, if you're paying attention, you don't, like, we just had the riots in the UK. The very same. I'll
Yeah.
give you an example. The very same people who were posting about the killing of the girls, may their souls rest in peace. The killing of those girls, right?
Yeah.
The very same people were posting very sort of visceral, very angering headlines about, that were posting misinformation. Now, I will mention a name here, Daily Mail, for instance. Daily Mail is, I think, every time there's a survey on this point, is the widest read newspaper in the land. I don't know how that is. It's everyone's guilty pleasure, because everyone lambasts it as if they don't read it, but it turns out it's the widest circulated newspaper when the surveys are done.
Yeah.
So everyone obviously reads this thing. But the Daily Mail, the biggest
It's
newspaper.
just about broadsheet enough to get the broadsheet readers, and just about tabloid enough to get tabloid readers.
Right.
So,
Maybe
yeah.
that's it.
Go on.
But at the very start, they're saying, they're putting very, very, to borrow your term, belligerent headlines about this incident without knowing anything, ginning it up. And then when the riots started, when the EDL, English Defence League, and the skinheads, the white racists, got out and started doing what they did, it was overnight, it was a shift. Thugs take over the streets, disgrace. And I'm thinking, but you were the ones that added kerosene. So there's obviously something at the top that is trying to gin up. But what I'm gonna say, I'm surprised at, is how easy people are. People, particularly people in the West, who have lived along, like older people who have lived along black people through a period like the 90s, where it, like you said, 90s felt better for in the UK, for like race relations, for understanding each other, black
Well,
and
I
white.
think it was better for us as black people. I think back in the 90s, though, we were super cocky, and I think white people probably prefer how it is now. I think it was better for us, because back then it's like, I don't know what it was. I think it was a part, even the hip hop movement is where all rappers were like conscious back then.
Yeah.
This was kind of before the era of gangster rap, and
Yeah.
back then, to qualify as a rapper, you got to show people your black card, like, what are you about? You know what I mean? You had to have at least 2 or 3 songs that were your quote unquote conscious songs in the album. You know what I mean? Where you're about black power. You
Yes,
had to do it.
yes,
You had to
yes.
do it. You didn't get away with not doing
Like
it.
a man like DMX put in songs like Prayer. I remember that was one of the first albums I ever got. That
He's
were mine.
2000s. So he's late. He's too
Yeah,
late. He's
yeah,
too
but yeah, you're right. But I remember even that late
yeah,
on, someone like him would
yeah,
have some of the worst lyrics, some of the worst songs. I'm not gonna start naming
yeah,
them, but in the same album, he'd have so really deep, like theologically. And
yeah,
I'm a Christian now. I'm talking deep theologically, like quoting proper scripture. I'm thinking the
yeah,
two don't match. So what's
yeah,
going
yeah,
on there?
yeah.
But I get what you're saying. I just want to shout out, do a massive shout out to the debunker. The debunker's joined us. I cannot do a shout out to him. He says earlier, the King's Monologue is this is a shout out to you now. The King's Monologue is one of the few history artists who takes historical facial reconstructions very serious. For that, I commend you, he says. Thank you very much for that. I'll say on his behalf. I don't know if you want to
Thank
say anything
you.
to that.
Appreciate it, debunker. Yeah, a lot of respect for the debunker as well. He's helped me out in a few of my previous reconstructions. So yeah, I probably need to shout him out, and get in contact with him again actually for some future ones.
Mm.
But I want to touch back on one of the things that you mentioned about the riots and stuff like that. And I'm gonna say something, and it's gonna be controversial.
Yeah, go on.
But you
That's what
invited me on
this.
your
That's
channel,
please,
so I
please,
kind of
please.
don't care.
I need it. I need
Um,
it. I need it. Come
all
on.
right, so this is what I'm gonna say. I'm going to say this. In recent history in the UK, there have been numerous attacks, like strange attacks. I'm not going to use a T word. I don't want to get you shut down. Yeah, that have been carried out by black people. Yeah,
Okay.
like high thingy ones. Like high. What's the word I'm looking for? You know, when everyone knows about it. I've forgotten the term. You know, when something that everyone's talking about. But anyway, there's been a few of those, and I'm going to tell you right now, none of them have been real. And I'm going to add this one to the list as well. So
Right. I see what you're saying.
I don't think any
Okay.
of them are real. I think there's a periodic. I feel like there's a periodic. Everything about the story is too convenient and too, like, I always rest on the side of common sense, and then when something makes no sense, I go, this isn't real. I'll give you an example, and it won't be this example, but um there was I'm not sure if you heard about, there was an attack on someone in Greenford, and by the way, that's where I live. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, attack in Greenford on a guy who used to collect a disabled guy who used to collect charity outside of Tesco Greenford. Yeah,
Hmm.
he was there every day for 30 years outside Tesco Greenford
Hmm.
collecting charity, and then he was set upon by some youths, and they unalived him on his wheelchair, and they ran off with his money bag or whatever. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the story. I don't know if you remember that one. That's about a year ago that came out.
I don't remember that one specifically, but go on.
Okay, cool. So that story is completely made up,
Wow.
and it went, obviously it's done in the news. It was completely made up, and I'll tell you why it's completely made up, because I grew up in that area and there's no such man. Yeah, I can tell you
Whoa.
that for free. No one knows this man. No one's ever met this guy. The guy didn't exist. They created this character of a man because they know that no one's really going to
No
check.
way.
Oh yeah, Green. Like, everyone just hears the story and they go, "Oh, he must be real."
No
The
way.
guy, he didn't exist. I promise you this. This is not me. Oh, conspiracy. No, no. I promise you, he didn't exist. I promise you, he didn't exist. That's one of my local stores. Okay, this man on the wheelchair, no one knows him. Oh yeah, everyone knew him in the community. This and the first. No, no, they didn't. And
Wow.
secondly, Greenford's not really that kind of community. To be honest with you, yeah, like everything about the story was fabricated, and you always know when it's fabricated because then they'll show you CCTV footage and it doesn't add up to what you're seeing and what you're hearing. Like, it's just a mess. And they've done this on multiple occasions. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I can name a half dozen attacks allegedly carried out by black youth that are kind of like really heinous ones that have riled up the public to hate and to set up, and they've all been made up. Every single last one of them. None of them were real.
Wow.
So I don't think this one was real. And that's me being totally honest with you. I don't think it's real. I don't think the victims are real. I think this is entirely fabricated. And I think they've gotten very good at doing that. And
Wow.
I know it's controversial. And I know a lot of people are going to even switch off and say, oh, you can't say that. I'm telling you right now, that's what I believe. And I don't give a shit. Excuse my
Do you know
French.
what? Do you know what though? Do you know what? Listen, guys, you came in to hear about some historical Egypt stuff. You're getting what we getting here? Alex Jones, David Dyke.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
better
yeah,
start
yeah.
dropping
This
them
is the
super
real
chats.
this, brother.
This is
You
incredible.
brought it up, man. Listen, this is why I don't do politics on my channel.
Wow.
This is why I don't do politics. This is why I made the King Mono show, which is my second
So
channel.
you are
Because if I start
clued up.
going deep on stuff,
So you are clued up. That's what I'm getting. That, and I'm so, oh my goodness, I'm awake for this. I'm all for this. This is amazing. So do you know what? And this is an anxiety of mine. Especially in the world we live in currently, you always self-censoring yourself. You don't know how much to let this other person that you're talking to let how much to let them know that you know about what's like really going on. How awake is the person I'm talking to? How awake are they actually? So you're always, kind of feeling for that. But I'm so happy that I'm talking to somebody who is, tooled up. Let's say is completely. You know what's going on. Speaking of, I said to mention.
I'm happy you're happy because
Oh,
it's not
bro.
always received that way. I thought, listen, bro, let's just get to the crowns, man.
No, bro, that's amazing. Your suspicion Do you know what? I'm gonna say, come out and say I had it too. But like Wildflower saying in the chat, he said, I heard a feeling, I had a feeling in my gut. I think he means to say there. I need to trust my intuition more, and that's the thing, though.
100%.
I had that feeling as well because, like you said, I don't know about this guy you're talking about in Greenford, but there have been
Yeah,
other things that I've thought, come on, that didn't happen. That's like
it
I
didn't
I,
make sense.
I live a stone's throw away from that. That I don't know about this, but you just go with, well, they say it happens or whatever. Wow,
Let
wow,
me go with the recent one really quickly. Yeah, just really quick. I'm just gonna zip through it. The reasons that give me, well, first of all, I know when stuff is rubbish because I'll tell you one of the big red flags that you can get, yeah, about these kind of things is when it happens, yeah, and they report on it and in full before there's been any chance for the police to investigate it. That doesn't happen with a real crime. We know that. Okay, it doesn't happen with a real crime. An
mm,
attack or whatever it is, there should be silence until there's been a chance to
of
amass the data,
course, of
get a clear
course.
picture. It should take a couple of days at least. When something happens, and whilst it's happening, there it's unfolding, and all of the news stations are simultaneously reporting with so much graphic detail. I can tell you right now, then you're dealing with something that's not real. That's
Hmm.
normally the case. And in the
Wow.
case of this one, I'm just going to list this really quickly. First of all, the boy was from Rwanda.
Yeah.
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 Now, straight away as a black Brit, yeah, that's what Rwanda.
Yeah.
Like, like throw Jamaica or Nigeria at me,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and maybe you'll convince me. Rwanda,
Yeah.
Rwanda. What are you talking about? With the
And
Rwandans that
and
there's
whenever
barely any here,
yeah.
first of all. And
Yeah.
secondly, the ones that are here ain't causing trouble. Yeah, Rwandans, like you freaking killing me. But that just
Yes.
happens to be the nation where they're trying to deport people. Did you remember that?
Yes,
Yeah,
course, course.
oh, that's really convenient because everyone would have been saying, "Why are you deporting people to Rwanda? Rwandan people don't cause any trouble." Oh, lo and behold, 2 months later, Rwandan boy does a flipping Columbine and stop. Are you? Am I? Come on, like, am I a PRICK? Like,
Well,
come on,
one of the things
like.
as well that was odd about it was that how quiet they kept. Now they had their plausible deniability ready. They said, well, the age he was 17. I'm pretty sure legally you can mention a 17-year-old's name. They've done
But they
it
got a
before.
picture of him when he's 10
Right,
that they put
right.
him on the news.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
exactly. So, but they said, but that time period was very important because that time period allowed all the false stuff to circulate social media that it was Muslim and he was this and that. So
Yeah,
I think they
deliberate.
could have easily quelled all that by saying, oh,
Yeah.
he's a British citizen. He's not even Muslim at all. Yeah, he's black, but he's a British
Mm.
citizen, born and bred here. So that could have happened very, very early on, and that for me had
Mm.
my feelers up. I thought, well, why didn't you just come out and say that? Especially if you saw the way things were going, you could have easily.
I
There was no legal barrier to disclosing the information about that boy unless you
It
wanted to
doesn't make
jail.
any sense. I've never heard of a 17-year-old boy going out and just killing children. Like, I'm
Yeah,
not, like, come on, man. Like, I'm not a prick.
and
Like, I'm not
as you
stupid.
said,
Like, there's nothing about, especially, and I'm not being funny, but that especially, and I'm gonna say this, and I don't think, especially a black kid. Let's be honest with you. Like, there's a lot of things that black kids do. Random Columbine style killings. That is the forte of the Caucasian race. Let's be honest, okay? If we're going to talk about differences in crimes, I know what crimes we do: aggravated, assaults, aggravated robberies.
yeah,
Let's
yeah,
be
yeah.
real, yeah, about
Hitman
the
them
kinds of,
up, hitman them up. No,
yeah,
no
yeah,
civilians,
exactly,
no
yeah,
civilians.
yeah.
Just go for other
Not, yeah,
fellow
not
man
being
them.
funny, but yeah, random Columbine styles attack. That's you lot's forte. Yeah. If you're gonna try and put that on, like, and children as well, like, it doesn't make that. I am not stupid. I was not born yesterday,
Mm.
and the most random of black races as well, which you just happen to be, because everyone knows the boy's a citizen, yeah, and the boy happens to be Rwandan. So what all these racist people gonna say when this fake trial goes through or whatever? They're gonna say send him back to where he came from, and all of a sudden the conversation
Ah,
starts back again about
oh
who should be able to
right.
hold the citizenship. Do you understand? Like, this is some BS. Like,
Yeah,
I wasn't born
yeah.
yesterday. This is some
I didn't even
BS.
think of that angle. Wow. Let me do a quick super chat shout out to, I've not forgotten, Kanda. Not oh, I remember Kanda. I remember you from your display. Thank you, brother. He sends us a 199.99 rand. Much love and respect to you, gentlemen, the disciples of Sheikh Anta Diop, the real chematologists. And that's an
Love.
amazing name that he's just mentioned there. But I remember, in fact, sorry, I just want to say that Sheikh Anta Diop started me on this journey. He started me. He started many people on this journey. He started me on this
Indeed.
journey. But that's for another day. That's for another day. Last thing before we click play on this video. So this has gone so far how I wanted it. 1 hour on just delving into you and what you're about. Get the chemistry going, and then we look at this video for about
Yeah,
another.
let's. We've done enough politics now.
Yes,
Definitely.
yes,
Let's
we
go.
definitely
Let's
have.
go.
Right, let me open this video up and share my screen. How we're gonna do is gonna go into the video. We're gonna play it. When you want to stop to say anything yourself, just say stop, and I'll pause the video, and that will be that. Let me know in the chat if you can hear or if you can't hear immediately, please. If anybody's struggling, just quickly say so in the chat. I'll press play now, and so yeah, King, come in whenever you want to. I have my own questions too, so I'll
I'm trying to
pause.
get the real time stream. Is it got to show on the? Where's the real
Ye-
time stream?
well, let me.
Because I'm playing it, but I'm behind on my phone. I've got it on my phone playing, but I'm behind because obviously I'm viewing it. But where can I get the real time stream?
What do you
Same thing that
mean?
you're looking at.
What? Oh, okay. I understand what you're saying. So there might be a lag then if I'm
Yeah.
not careful. Okay. Well, I don't.
I'll let you know what. I'll let you lead the pausing because I don't need to. It's my video. I don't
Okay.
really need to pause this.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Let's
I'll
do
let
it
you
that
lead
way
the
then.
pausing. Yes,
Let's
fine.
do that because I'm still really new
Yeah.
to all of this. So, all right. Let me just share the screen and we can go.
I hope it appears.
Okay. All right. Whilst I'm doing that, let me just read out some comments here. Um, this is the thing about the. Yeah. Here we go. Here we go. It's coming up. All right. Let me just. You heard that, King, didn't you?
I can hear you right now,
Okay.
but I can't hear anything
I'm
else.
gonna press play again. I'm pausing it to say, can you hear that?
Okay. I can see I can see it on my phone. I can't see the real time stream, so I'm just gonna rely on you to.
How so can you but you can't hear what I can hear just on
No,
my
I can't
connection.
hear
So
any of that.
how would you do that? Is it something that I can quickly fix right now or just ignore it and we'll just go on?
I don't know. One second. There must be a way that I can tap into what, or you can. One second. Go to settings. See if there's any option. No. I think you have to somehow share it with me as well.
Right,
I don't know
right.
if you have an option to do that.
Let me see if I can do that. And share screen with others. Right. Let me see if I can do that right now. Okay. Let's see.
Yeah, so click that and then share it with me somehow if you can.
Brilliant. Let's do that. Okay, cool. Um, allow. Yes. Okay. All right. Can you see? Is it working somehow?
It's loading. It's loading. It looks promising. Yes.
Brilliant.
Cool.
Brilliant.
All right. I can see your OBS screen
All
now,
right.
so
Cool.
that's good.
Cool. Okay. So I'm gonna press play again.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Here we go. No, not there. I'm gonna press play. I'm gonna start the video again. Sorry, everyone. I'm gonna start the video again.
Cool.
Okay. People are saying in the chat that they can't hear the video. All right. I thought that might happen. Hang on, just 1 second. Right, I'm just trying to see if I can sort this out so that people can hear it as well online on YouTube. Come on now, buddy.
Let me know
Yeah.
when you.
Okay. Just gonna go back to this. Yeah, I really need to get on StreamYard then. And this will be the last time I use OBS. Okay.
Don't worry about it, Wiz.
Right.
It's streaming pains, I call it.
Do this. Right, is that? Can you hear that, people?
I can hear it, but it sounds like it's coming through the mic in your room.
Yeah. Okay. I understand what's going on. I was trying to. Oh, this is weird. I'm gonna play
Have
it
you
again.
created a audio output for it on OBS?
I believe so. Yeah, it's saying.
Well, that's all I had.
Okay, bear with me, everyone. I will fix this. Okay. Let's try this again. Desktop audio on. Right, I'm gonna play it again. Let me know if you can hear it or you can't.
Can't hear it. Is it playing? Because I can see it, but I can't hear it.
Okay, you can't hear it. Okay, cool. Right, I think I know what I'll do. Right, hang on a second. Okay.
If you don't figure it out, then we could always pivot and kind of use the visuals alongside discussion.
Yeah, I think I know.
That's if you can't.
I think I know what the issue is, and I'm just gonna quickly sort it now. I'm gonna take out my. I'm not gonna use my microphone as a output. Okay, so let's go to desktop audio, and let's go to. Let's take that out. Go for speakers. Okay. Take it off. I'm just gonna go for that. Right. Right, King, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Yes, indeed.
Can you hear me now, King?
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, brilliant. Take this out. Can you still hear me?
I can.
Okay. Bro, this is great. Okay, so halfway there, and I will now just make sure this is not causing us any problems. Chat, can you still hear me and the King? Let me know. Press 1 if you can hear me right now, and if you heard the King
I
earlier.
can hear you.
Okay. All right.
You're coming through the chat.
Yeah. Okay, I'm coming through the chat. Brilliant. Thank you. That's all I need. And now let me see if it works this way. Now when I press play.
But rather the crowns of Kemet, such as the Hedjet, the Atef, the
Now?
Nemes, and the Deshred,
It's low, but it's audible.
Can everyone hear that?
I heard it. Okay.
Okay, King says 1. Can you hear the video properly? Now let me know if you can hear the video properly, folks, by pressing 2.
Felt linen or beaded wraps that decorated but conformed to the shape of culturally significant African hairstyles.
Okay, brilliant. Let's go. So King, just to double check, triple check, King, you can hear me fine, and the chat can hear me fine, right? Hello.
Hello. I'm here. Sorry, I was just reviewing the live stream to hear
What's
if I
going
could
on?
hear the video when it
King, are
was
you
playing
there?
for the live stream. I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello.
Am I coming through?
Can you hear me?
Am I
Have I
coming through at
disappeared? You are coming
all?
through.
Says I am.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Am I disappeared? I'm here. Can you not hear me? I am
King,
here. You might have cut me off.
I can't hear you back.
Okay, that's weird. I can see my meters going up on
King?
your OBS. So your OBS can hear me. One second.
All right, so family can hear me, but you can't hear the King back, and I need to be able to hear the King back because that's how this interview is going to
Hello.
work. Right.
I'm here.
Yeah, we're not hearing each other.
My
You
mic
can hear me
is
both, but you're not hearing each other.
showing
Okay, right. Let
up
me see.
on
That's
your
how this is going to work. Okay,
OBS meter.
I think I know the answer to that too. 1 second, guys.
I'm here. I'm
For
here.
this.
Hello.
Okay, microphone source is that, and okay, what's going on here? What is
They
going
said
on
they can
here?
hear us both on the chat.
Oh, okay. People can hear the King. 1 sec, King. I'm just about to fix this. Something to do with my sound settings on my hardware here. All right.
Don't worry, just chalk it up to an
I
evening
take
with
it you can probably still
OBS.
see my screen. See how amateurish I am here.
No, it's not your fault. Don't worry. Next
Oh.
time, I know you
The
can't hear
reason
me
why
right
things are
now, but I'm just
lagging
talking
is
to everyone else.
because, yeah, again, I'm using. Okay, that's cool. Output is that, and my input is that. So there shouldn't be any problem. Oh, goodness. Okay, so I don't get this.
It must be something
Right,
simple because everyone can hear me.
I'm gonna close this again. Leave page, and I'll then restart this. All right, guys, just bear with me. Sorry.
I think the live stream's being
Let's go.
sabotaged by the security gremlins. We touched on too many topics.
Okay, back in my own room.
Da-da-da-da-da-da.
Director's microphone thing. All right, King. Let me know if you can hear me now. And
Oh,
okay.
what's going on?
Let's get rid of that. Hello, King. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear
Well,
me?
you can probably hear me, but I can't hear you back. This is
Oh
unbelievable.
man,
Right.
this is crazy. I can hear you fine, but you can't hear me, which is real frustration.
Source is not that. Still video. All I want is to sort that out. Okay. Audio source should be that. Why is it not working?
Da-da-da.
Um,
Can you reverse what you just did? Let me message it to you. Kind of, there's a point in speaking. Can you reverse
yeah.
what you
Right,
did?
I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can
You
you?
can hear
Right,
me.
brilliant,
I can hear
brilliant.
you fine.
Oh, right, good. Almost lost it there. Good. All right. Share the screen again, and let's go. All right, guys. Almost messed up everything there. Right, family. One more time. One, if you can hear me and the king, and the video I'm about to play. We can hear. Brilliant. Let's go.
Cool. All right, let's go. Right, let's go. I think it's a go. I think we're on. I think it's a go.
Bust of the Queen of Benin. Confronted with this artwork, one would be forgiven for believing the crown to be, in life, a luxurious solid gold adornment similar to that of the Crown of England. However, in reality, it's simply a monotone representation of an elaborate coiffure constructed from beads and natural African hair that provides structure and support, making such a style possible. These trichological crowns, popular throughout Africa,
Can we pause there?
for Kemetic monarchies.
Yes, we can. Right, go on.
Super. All right. So one of the things that I just want to touch on this point is that the crown itself, I'm discovering, is a creation of Africa. If you go back to ancient civilizations, the whole entire concept of a crown actually for most societies does not exist outside of Africa. So you have, for instance, in Greece, you have perhaps a ruler wearing a wreath, which was quite common. You have a uraeus, but then you have in a lot of other civilizations, there's no distinguishing factor between what the ruler wears on their head and what others wear on their head. Whereas the crown itself is a concept that was birthed from the idea of ethnotrichology. And ethnotrichology basically is this idea that you have tiers in hairstyles. So hairstyles actually means something. You can't just walk around as a member of public with your hair in a press or something like that. Do you understand? There's a tier system.
Yeah, I get that.
And at the very top of that tier system is the ruler. And that's where the concept of a crown came from. So it's like the ruler has the ruler's hairstyle. That hairstyle becomes adorned with a uraeus and something else. And that's where the very concept of a crown actually came from. So when you look at these European crowns, these are just evolutions, which is why I touched on that right at the start of the video. This evolutions of African crowns. It's very probable that hairstyle in Benin predates the crowns that they have in Europe, which I think only go back to about 1600. That, you know, the Queen's crown with those kind of like very Benin shape kind of curves in it. There's actually that shaping is actually proven to come from West Africa. It's a Nigerian thing. With those kind of like curved coils that meet each other in the middle, look slightly like a horn. All of that you can find hats that date back to the 17th, 16th century that are in the style of the English crown, but weren't influenced by Europe. So anyway, that's a whole another conversation. The point I want to stress there is that the very concept of a crown is an African idea. It's an African concept. Before Africans started wearing crowns, no one was wearing crowns.
Right. Right. People are saying everything's better. Cool. People are saying that they can hear you better now. Whilst you were talking there, I was halfway. I was in between fixing what was going on in terms of what people could hear. So sorry about that. Okay. Right.
No.
I wanted to. It's good that you said that. Right, because within 1 minute in, you mentioned that these crowns were like felt, right? And you talked. I just wanted you to explain that in baby terms to someone who's not um, acquainted with African hair traditions. So when you're saying that I'm thinking of the hedget in particular. It's the one that kind of has a conical kind of tapering off. Okay, it looks like an L from a sort of a profile, right? Is that the hedget or the
That's the Deshret, the one that looks like an
Deshret?
L. Did you say?
Yes, the L
So
one.
the
That's the
flat top
Deshret.
one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the Deshret.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's the Deshret, right? So, you pointed out you pointed to that, and you mentioned how it could have been felt or wrapped in some kind of cloth material. Can you explain that in terms of like what Africans actually do with their hair generally? Just a quick explanation will do.
Yeah, I think. Well, I mentioned it later in the video
Okay.
that actually the entire concept of the crowns being covered in felt. I actually got that from Diodorus, who says that. So there's actually a quote from Diodorus
Okay, then
Siculus. He
let me
says
play
that.
the video because you do go on to talk about that. Let the video speak for itself. I'm gonna
Okay.
press play and then we'll get back to that.
Okay, cool.
For instance, King Tutankhamun was exhumed with a diadem and blue skull cap crown on his head. Why was this crown overlooked or not considered a true example of a crown? Was the issue that the European...
I'm gonna stop there. Because I had a pre-planned question. I never, ever, ever saw this. I've never seen this image. And do you know what's funny? If I'd have seen this image, I would have been able to come to the same conclusion that you come to in this whole video. And a lot of people from an African background would have been able to make sense of this. I'm thinking of a video, right, that will talk about the things that only make sense if you start looking at the ancient Egyptians from an African perspective. Like it's still very it's in very much infant stages in my mind right now. But there are certain things that it just doesn't make any sense unless you're African and you're seeing these people as Africans. For example, this headdress that I've paused it on. I never knew that they found this thing that we're looking at on Tutankhamun's head when they exhumed him. Can you explain about this, please?
Yeah, so basically, 18th dynasty is actually a really good dynasty to look at when it comes to this entire subject of crowns, because we have a lot preserved as a result. Not as much as we should do, because Howard Carter found Tutankhamun's tomb untouched and he still managed to desiccate it and destroy it so much. The mind boggles how much destruction that friggin' devil did, but I'm not going to talk about that too much. But what I will talk about is King Tutankhamun here is wearing a skull cap crown. And what you'll find with the crowns, going back to your question earlier about them being covered in felt beads, light materials, these are the kind of things that you'll find African hair covered in when they do have hats. So things like Isikola hats will be covered in straw, or if you look at the Ngala hairstyle that you can see in Benin and in amongst the Igbo, they'll just dress the hair with beads. Okay, this is all very normal. This is the same thing we're seeing here with King Tutankhamun, where he has basically got short hair. So as a result of having short hair, he has a short crown. He has a skull-shaped crown. But yet we see iterations of this throughout the 18th dynasty. So you can see a version of this where there's a bit more hair with Queen Nefertiti like to wear. I haven't got an image now, but you could just maybe Google something like Stele of Nefertiti, and you'll see she has a slightly larger version because she's wearing an Urugori hairstyle underneath, which is their kind of patted down hairstyle that they do in Rwanda. Then you have the cut, which is worn by, it's a favorite of Akhenaten, Tutankhamun when he was younger. Hatshepsut loved the hat, and that's the one with the big puffy, it's the one that looks like a bonnet at the back. So what you're seeing is all of these crowns are iterations of the same thing. It's a single crown, but the crown is simply growing in line with how the hair is being grown underneath it. So that's all it is. So King Tutankhamun's crown here is identical to the crown that the Nubian kings wore. This is the exact skull cap crown that you find on Pianki, Taharqa, all the Nubian kings. They didn't mess, they had their hair short. And they had the skull cap crown. Whereas you have the 18th and 19th dynasty, they have the more longer hairstyles and hence have the larger crowns. So very much the case is that the crown is a reflection of the size of the hair beneath it. At least that's what seems to be indicated.
Wow. And if you look at this image, what you're seeing is something that resembles beading, covering the band, going over the actual head of Tutankhamun. And as the video will show you, it's something that Africans do even today quite very well. Right, I'm just gonna play about when next I ask you a question. I'm playing about with the echo right now. People are saying that there's still an echo. I'm gonna.
I think it's just with me because I can hear myself when I'm talking.
Right.
Oh, it's gone a bit now. It's gone. No, it's come back slightly.
It's come back. Okay, what about now, guys? Can you say something, King? Just
okay. Hello. It's definitely less. I don't know what you've done,
okay,
but it's not as jarring now. Yeah.
Okay, people still saying there's an echo. Okay.
No, but that's the old comment. Let's see if it gets better. Give it some time.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's right. So, okay. All right. You gonna let me know? Just let me know. Right. All right. I'm gonna play the video, and when next you're talking, people will let me know whether there is this echo still going on. Right.
What they had interpreted to be solid metal crowns shown in Kemetic statues and artwork, lacking the understanding of African ethno-trichological cultural practices, King Tutankhamun's blue skull cap crown actually perfectly adheres to the protocols of crowns in Kemet. Historically speaking, African rulers have always had crowns that accentuate their characteristically buoyant and upright hair, utilizing beads and or fabrics to complete the look. As such, the crowns always conforms to the shape of the coiffure. An example of this domestically African...
So just to pause there really quickly.
Okay, go on.
That's just the crown, the hairstyle that you saw there amongst the Jimma in Ethiopia. That crown, I think that hairstyle there is probably very close to the crown you mentioned earlier, the Deshret. I'd imagine it would have been a style like that, which would have housed the Deshret. I don't think it would have just been a flat top. I think it would have been. I think their crowns, a lot of the time, would have been made solid using kind of like wires intertwined. So it's very similar to what you see with some of those Amasunzu styles, and with how they secure hair. And I think the Lopombo hairstyles in the Congo, where they will intertwine wires to get intricate shapes. That's what I think is the case anyway. And there's still an echo. It's gotten loud again.
It's gone louder.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to turn that completely that way, and so I think I know. I'm on my microphone. I'm turning it more towards the mic than the computer. So I think it's better when it's more.
Have you got headphones on?
No, I've not got headphones on, but should I?
Yeah, put headphones on now. Get rid of the echo because I think it's being picked up in my voice is being picked up through your speakers.
Okay. Right. All right. Let's find out if the echo's still there, guys. King.
Should I speak? Hello. No echo. Well,
no echo at all.
Yeah, no, it doesn't sound like an echo.
Oh,
no, it's still a bit.
Brilliant. I hope that's
less. It's less, but it's still there.
It's less, but it's still there. Okay. All right, I'm gonna play the video again.
Speaking ethnicities in
I know the answer. Sorry.
Go on.
Mute my microphone on OBS so that my only output should be the OBS stream. Sorry, the video ninja stream. So
Right.
if I've got a mic, mute it on
Oh, wow, okay.
OBS,
Let's do
the
that.
TKM mic. Yeah.
Let's do that.
Just in
Just in
OBS.
OBS.
Just in OBS Ninja or the actual OBS app.
No, in OBS. In OBS, mute my mic.
Okay, cool.
If I've got an independent mic on OBS, mute
All right.
it.
How about now? Can you still speaking? What
So
about now,
if
guys?
I talk now, hello,
I
can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hello, hello.
I can hear you, guys. Are you hearing
Hello,
an
can you
echo
hear
when the
me?
king
No, you
speaks?
can't hear me. Okay.
I can hear you. I can hear you.
Can you hear me, bro?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, good. That's good.
So what about you when you're speaking?
I can hear myself. There's no echo whatsoever.
Oh, brilliant. We've sorted it then. Yeah?
So I can hear myself, but I haven't, my stream hasn't caught up yet. So I don't know if they can hear me, but I'm gonna let's.
No, I think they can hear you. Right, press 1, guys, if you can hear the king without the echo, and if you can hear myself clear as well.
Check. One.
Right, Wildflower says it's good. I think somebody else said finally. Claire, know thyself says Claire. Well, I don't know if that's know thyself of know thyself fame.
Okay,
But
cool.
people are saying they can hear you. All right, good. I'm just gonna play this video now because we're behind. Right.
Yeah, I think we're good. Okay, good. Let's go. Wicked. Okay, we're good now.
Hair shaping techniques reflected in a cultural tradition called Amasunzu. The Rwandan culture of Amasunzu is believed to have shared a cultural conduit to pharaonic kingship. The German colonizers of the region believed the Tutsi to be descendants of the pharaohs. In the 1931 documentary The Congo I Knew, Dennis states that the Tutsis had, quote, descended from Egypt, end quote. Whether this was true or just a belief fueled by phrenology is unclear, but what is evident is the Rwandan hierarchy of aristocracy and divine kingship formally reflected.
I'm gonna pause it there and say, can you tell us a bit more about this Dennis fellow? Because that's presumably that's a Caucasian individual, that's a white man that's made that statement. What was it?
Yeah.
If you can cast your mind back to the research you did for the video, what was it particularly that he was pointing to say that?
I think he could see it in the culture, but also see it in the stature in terms of how they look. If you look at the Rwandans, and this is something that has grown immensely actually since I've done this documentary, the links between Rwanda and Kemet there are certain cultures in Africa that really preserve and scream that, yeah, you guys definitely resided in a Sapat in Kemet somewhere, you know? You have the Afar. Like, no one could tell me that the Afar weren't residing in some Sapat somewhere in Kemet. No one could tell me that the Oromo weren't residing in a Sapat in Kemet. And no one could tell me that the Rwandans weren't residing in a Sapat somewhere in Kemet because they preserved too much. So I think they were aware of more than what we know. One of the things is the kingship that you have in Rwanda. They actually have a preserved king list, and that's an old thing, you know. That's without debate. You can even, I think it's even got a Wikipedia page where you can bring up the Rwandan kings, and they have Ramesses as one of their forefathers, you know. And this is before Egyptomania and all of that stuff. This is something that's preserved, you know, throughout this time. I actually believe the genocide in Rwanda was very deliberate. I still got an echo. I can hear it. I hope I'm not echoing for no one else. That's good.
No one's mentioned anything yet about the echo, so we'll just ride that wave for now.
Fine, good. All right, so it's just gonna bother me then.
Sorry, bro.
It's okay. So it does make me pause a bit, but it's fine. In fact, maybe I'll just take one ear off my headphone. That'll help. That does help. Okay, so they've preserved both Ramesses and actually Seti in their king list, and you can Google this. I think they call Ramesses Romezo, so they have Romezo the second and Romezo the third. So they have Ramesses the second, Ramesses the third in the king list, and then they have Musindi, who is Seti, who comes after them. So they have this preserved. And also there's a YouTuber, I can't remember her name, but someone put it in a chat, who's doing an amazing job linking the Bantu language and Bantu film with the ancient Egyptian language. And she's reading literal hieroglyphs of the wall and making sense of them in the Bantu dialect. So there's these really clear anthropological ties between Rwandan culture, and I say Rwandan, Uganda, there's a whole Great Lakes region. So I could say the Great Lakes region and Kemet, whether they came from a Sapat or whether or not they represent Punt or whether they, I don't know what it is, but there's very, very clear ties. Now, obviously, the most clear and obvious tie is the one, or one of them, I should say, is the one that Diop revealed to us with the hairstyle, which was so significant. In fact, going off on a little bit of a tangent now, since we're on the topic, one of the things that I had a revelation of recently is that the banning of hairstyles on the African continent was one of the most aggressive forms of deconstruction that was practiced by the Europeans to destroy African civilization. I heard a quote from Ivan van Sertima. I was watching a video of his the other day, and he said this in quote. He said, "What happened in Africa is like it's like someone's come along and dropped a series of nuclear bombs on Africa, and then turned around and said, 'Where is your civilization?'"
Wow.
But what really dawned on me is this, and this is why I bring up this point. Civilization is not preserved everywhere. It's preserved in a few key structures. And if you can destroy those few key structures, you can, in essence, erase a civilization from having ever existed. You can erase a nation's history. Because actually, if a country invades your country, they don't have to bomb everybody's house to basically erase your civilization. Yeah, you don't, because the whole of the city, think about Carthage, okay, almost raised. But the only reason we know Carthage existed is because of other people talking about Carthage. Yeah. Carthage itself was raised. I know we have some ruins, but we wouldn't have known those ruins were there. We'd have had no reason to excavate in any of those areas had we not heard the rumors of Carthage from the Romans. Yeah. If you erase certain structures, then you erase a civilization, and those structures are very simple. They're the residences of the aristocracy and the temples.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's it. You only need to erase those two things and you erase entirely civilization, because you don't get records.
Say those two things again, just one more time. Say those two things again.
The temples.
The temples.
And the dwellings of the aristocracy.
Wow. Okay.
And the palaces, put simply. The temples and the palaces. If you erase the temples and the palaces, then the civilization never existed. Okay? If you go to England and you erase the castles, which is the palaces, the dwelling places of the aristocracy, and you erase the churches, then England's never had a civilization.
Oh my
God.
Yeah, I never thought about
There's
that.
Nothing
yes,
else.
That's true. Gone.
And it dawned on me the other day, literally, when Ivan van Sertima made that very powerful quote. And this is what they did very powerfully in Africa. What did they do when they invaded Benin? They got rid of the Palace of the Oba. And everyone's just like, oh, it's just the Palace of the Oba. Where do you think all the annals were kept about the nation? Where do you think the histories were kept? Where do you think that we were even so wise? We kept the annals of our ancestors in bronze plaques to preserve them, and they even took those. So it's not even like they just books to burn. The only reason we have any history about Timbuktu is because the books in Timbuktu were kept in private libraries across the nation. It's the only, we don't have anything from the actual library of Timbuktu. That was destroyed. That's gone. That's dust. The only reason we have all of those books from Timbuktu is because people went on missions collecting them from private libraries across the nation and across surrounding nations as well to bring them back to Mali. And now we have some semblance of a library of Timbuktu.
Wow.
So if you destroy certain structures, you erase a civilization. And that's what happened in Africa. A lot of people don't realize it dawned on me the other day. That's exactly what happened. You erase the Ober's palace and you destroy the wall of Benin. And what's left? Nothing. You erase the civilization. We don't know where they came from, what their history is. You don't have anything,
And I'm going to say,
to any nation. It's not like it's unique.
but also, in addition to that, you've also got a situation whereby post doing that, you've perpetually got your boot on the necks of those people so that they can't rebuild what they lost. They can't. So colonialism came in, and now we've got neo-colonialism, which is worse than colonialism, because at least with colonialism, you had the colonial masters in these spaces putting up a show of rebuilding the places, infrastructure and whatnot. But now they don't even have to do that because they can have the ostensible, well, we're out. You wanted us out, so we're out. But we'll rape you of your resources, though. And anytime you try and get an honest leader in to try and balance the bargaining power between the two of us, we'll just send in the CIA and we'll put in our guy. So it's worse now in that sense. But what that does, this perpetual povertization, impoverishment of Africa, it does is we can't even rebuild that ourselves. We're too busy trying to survive. So we can't say, okay, look, they're out now. Let's try and build this up ourselves. I was watching something, before I
also, can I just add
yeah, of course, please.
Really quickly, because you made a very good point and it ties in to the original question, which I went off on around. I do that a lot. You are used to that with me by now. The point is that this is where the banning of the hairstyles comes in. Because the hairstyles, exactly what you just said there, they remove your structures, but then you don't know how to rebuild your structures. When they banned the hairstyles like Amasunzu in Rwanda, they didn't just ban the hairstyles, they murdered the royal family and they murdered the priests. They murdered the people who had the understanding of the significance of the hairstyles.
Of course.
So now if you go to Rwanda, who are the people holding knowledge to how to implement Amasunzu ethno-trichological standards again? Do those people even exist? Has that knowledge been passed down? If you've burned the temples and you've killed the priests and you've murdered the aristocracy, who are the knowledge keepers that will tell you how ethno-trichology
all whilst saying to the world,
to use these Amasunzu style and what significance?
All whilst you're saying to the world that
These
they had
people
no
came from
culture.
nothing. Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
This is
so you kill. Someone just said they kill the leaders and the prophets. Exactly the same thing. You killed the aristocracy and you remove the priests who are the knowledge holders, then a nation doesn't know what to do. They're lost. So even when a lot of African nations gained their independence, they were like babies starting from scratch because their own governance structures, the things that made sense, the things that they'd been building for thousands of years, the annals, the records, the people who held the knowledge had all been killed. So what do you do from there? You start from scratch. You look at West and you say, oh, how do you guys do a democracy? Because you haven't got a clue how to do it yourself.
But we had democracy. That's the painful part about it. We had a sophisticated form for Africa. I'm West African Yoruba man, but we had an amazing. I did law. That's my discipline, my academic discipline, and we had a whole module on constitutional law, and and rightly so, the pride with which constitutional law and the history of constitutional law in the UK is taught is amazing. It's just there. We have a system that's unique in the United Kingdom. We have the king. It's a constitutional monarch. We were able to preserve our monarchy because we came up with a thing called constitutional monarchy, where the king has power, but really not really, because that power is subject to the law and parliament. Turns out Yorubas had the same thing, what? Almost 1,000 years ago, and it was part of the birth of our nation state that created a civilization like the Oyo civilization. We had that system in Oyo, whereby the king wasn't an absolute king. He was subject to a very close-knit group of men that would decide, and it wasn't even hereditary. This close-knit group that elected the king could decide, actually, you know what, your son doesn't look like he's got the right screws in place, so therefore we're not going to pass it automatically to him. We had that system. We had all of that going on. So, but you would think that, let them tell the story. It was just pure savagery. They got there and it was savagery, But these are the things that were lost in time, and I still have this debate with people of my own skin color. They tell me that the way Africa is now is the way it's always been. We can't do anything ourselves, blah, blah, blah. But actually, that's a lie. That's a lie that, because it's been told long enough, we ourselves believe it. We ourselves start to believe. We look around,
absolutely,
and we think, yeah, well, it must be true because look at the state of things now. But that's a lie. But let me stop, because we need to get through this video. I'm so angry, and we're only 5 minutes into the video. Let me play on the video.
No,
Sorry.
don't do that. Because I just want to say one thing on that point as well, really quickly. And the point I was going to say is that aristocracy, a monarchy, is superior to a democracy in every way, shape, or form. And they've sold the world, and they've sold to us, Africa, and not just Africans, even our brothers in the Eastern world. They've sold us a lie that democracy is a superior system, and it's not.
Okay, preach.
Monarchy is superior in every way, shape, or form, and we'll talk. We could talk about that, because that requires a bit of a rant. But the long and short of it is, a democracy in a capitalistic system is always going to result in corruption and self-serving behavior, always, because even the entire concept that someone could ascend to leadership who has no genetic ties to the nation, and could simply be there for their own exploitative gain, is a flawed system. You need someone who literally their entire existence relies on the happiness of the people, and that's what a monarchy is. Monarchies knew that if these people aren't happy, there's going to be chaos. Monarchies know, if I don't make these people happy, they're going to kill my son and my daughters. They knew that. And that's my only purpose. As much as I might fatten myself and I might exploit my power sometimes, my overriding goal is to keep these people happy, to keep this nation happy. This is my legacy. This is my children's inheritance. When you remove monarchy from a nation, you will always get chaos. And that's why Britain has maintained its monarchy throughout. Even when they killed their monarchy, they replaced them immediately, because they know how it works. And they removed monarchy from Africa pretty much exclusively.
We're gonna have to do a part 2 where we just talk about some of this stuff on its own. We'll talk about that offline. But this is we need to do this regularly. Basically, we need to do this regularly. Let me play this video. Yeah.
Definitely play the video.
Styles of Amasunzu unquestionably reflects the class and aristocratic layers that were once seen in Kemetic society. European colonizers were quick to identify the cultural significance of ethnotrichology, so they denied the colonized masses the right to exercise the hairstyles that bore so much social and historical significance, using Christianity as a means of propaganda to demonize and excessively punish indigenous expressions of culture and social organization, both domestically and in the African diaspora. as explained here by a native Rwandan.
So just pause there.
Paused. Go on, King.
Yeah, thank you. So just to reiterate the point that I made earlier, on top of what I said in this video already regarding hairstyles, you need the knowledge of the priests and all those. Because remember, just going back to that point, it's the same in every nation. It wasn't just England. You don't get widespread literacy across the entire nation. Some people were just farmers their entire life. Some people were agriculturists their entire life. Some people were, everyone had their, some people were building. Everyone had their place in society, sorry. And knowledge was the remit of the aristocracy and the priesthood. And that goes across every nation. And this is why it's very easy to deconstruct a nation through the removal of aristocracy and priesthood. So when they remove the hairstyles and they remove the people who held the knowledge of those things, it becomes almost impossible to reinstate it. So that's the only point I want to make there. That's it.
Wow. Okay. Thank you for that. Right, people are saying the video's law. I fixed that. Hopefully that changes now. I'm gonna press play again.
imyaka 45 irashize cyangwa 50 barakuyeho amasunzu. Sasa noneho bagarura za punk urumva barashaka kugereranya n'amasunzu kandi babigira kuko bigishwa kwigira, niba bigira koko nibigire. Isi yose irogosha kandi kogosha ni umurimbo. Sasa kugira ngo noneho bogoshe kubyo babonye haze nibogoshe kubya gakondo byabo.
All right. How's that sound for you, King?
For me, it's not great, but I can hear enough to be able to just intercede when I need to. So don't worry about me. I'm fine.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I don't think it was great because I could hear this like sizzling kind of a sound. Let me. Yeah, someone just says that. All right, I'll just change that. I thought I fixed it there. I thought I was on something there. Let me just change that back to normal speakers, and there we go. Right. I wanted to say about that fella there. Sorry, guys. I wanted to say about that guy there that the what. I'm not gonna go back because just for time's sake, but that was an Amasunzu gentleman from Rwanda, and he was talking essentially. Yeah, I can see in the chat people are saying that the sound, it won't happen again. I won't try that experiment again. But that Amasunzu guy was, it's always the old heads, and that's all I was going to say about that. I've only just started realizing myself how much the aged, the elderly, how much the elderly are a repository of like knowledge, and that goes on to something else. You know, we've been taught to believe that oral tradition, wisdom passed through the elders orally onto the next generation is a no-no, or everything has to be written down for it to be valuable and to be credible. But I don't know. I'm gonna let you go with that, because what that man was saying there is like, it's just amazing to me that you can have a human being who holds, you can burn books, okay? But if somebody is present who remembers how things were, that person is a living, breathing, like, document. Anyway, I don't know what you want to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It does, once again, it makes me think about I speak about this quite a lot on my channel, and I always say to everyone that you need to listen to your elders. I think one of the great problems of I'll say our generation, but also our parents' generation, you may or may not agree with me here, but I think one of the great problems of those two generations is the elevating of education, Western education, above the words of our elders. Yeah. I think those two generations spend a lot of time disregarding the words of their elders because they know better. you know. So, I talk about this a lot with my, my American audience, where, I've heard the story so many times where there's a grandparent who says they're Cherokee or they're Choctaw, Native, and it's, oh no, you're not. We all came from a boat from Africa. It's like, the hell, you're telling your ancestor where they came. They're telling you where they came from, and you're correcting them because you know better, because you're educated. And we do the same thing amongst Africans. We do the same thing where the words of our elders, are disregarded, and that's where history is lost, because I guess we haven't been raised in that environment where respect and real reverence for the words of your elders is upheld highly in your society, and especially when you come from, like you said, an oral society. Going back to the point I made about Benin, they deliberately put their histories on bronze plaques. So every single ruler that ever had ruled Benin had a plaque, and all normally several, explaining their history. Now, this needed to be tied with the oral history in order for the stories to make sense. Otherwise, those bronze plaques are just plaques with people on them doing weird things, because you haven't got the knowledge holder to interpret the story for you. So the oral history is immensely important. But it's about how do we go about reclaiming that? Well, first of all, I think you made the important note, and that is actually take some time to talk to and to learn and to glean knowledge from your elders as much as possible, because that's going to fill out more gaps than any academic books are going to. So that's my kind of view on that.
Wow. All right, I'm gonna carry on the video now. Yeah. Okay, let's go.
2008 study, Jeffrey Tazzi acknowledges the importance of Egyptian hair in the portrayal of social and class status, stating, hairstyles were used as a means of displaying status. An institutionalized canon for hairstyles was established, coinciding with the creation of administrative institutions. These codified hairstyles continue to serve as the norms for identifying members of the administration or signs of authority. Tassi acknowledges 6 major styles used consistently for ethno-trichological distinction from the pre-dynastic to the Middle Kingdom. These styles are shaved, which is basically bald, cropped, which Africans identify as a shape-up, short round and curly, which is essentially an afro.
Can I just intercede really quickly?
Yes, go on, King.
Thank you. I just want to state that as much as I gleaned from Tassi's work, and actually you mentioned earlier, this is a really well-referenced documentary. I could have easily done this documentary without Tassi. Sometimes the inclusion of references is just to make people feel more comfortable about the theories I'm going to espouse, And I say that in Tassi's regard, particularly because he, I more kind of put up with his work than got anything from it, if that makes sense. He kind of like gave me a framework where I was kind of like, well, actually I could present it in this way. It gives me a convenient way to present it. But in terms of his interpretation of what Egyptian hairstyles were was absolutely ridiculous. It was clown-like, if I'm going to be totally honest with you. He talked about the fact that the duplex style is one of the points he says in his paper is that the reason the Egyptian hairstyles look big is because they were trying to carve them into rock. Do you understand?
And this is a 2000. This is a relatively recent paper. I think I saw 2008 on there.
It is relatively. He's actually passed away, so I'm not gonna mock him as he's passed now.
Yeah.
But some of the claims were still those ridiculous. I mean, I say ridiculous. Maybe he just came from a school of Egyptology where he didn't even think to consider that the Egyptians are black, and that was the easiest explanation for their hair just being Afro hair. He never even posited the fact in that entire paper, and it's an incredibly long paper, by the way, over 200 pages. It's not a short paper.
to say nothing,
to see,
to say a few
to have
things.
no. He didn't reference African hairstyles once in the entire paper. The fact that any African can sit down and say, point to a hairstyle and say, "Oh, I recognize that. That's a X, Y, Z." That shows you how little regard these Egyptologists, quote unquote, have for Africa, because they were even when they knew that these hairstyles were inspired by Nubia, they still didn't regard Africa enough to see if they could find the living equivalent.
Well, I'm not going to give anything away, but I think the same paper touches sort of on that inadvertently, and it's something that's said by this paper that kind of is galling. But I'll let the video show that.
Which is slightly longer twists, are found commonly amongst the Afar tribe of Ethiopia. The shoulder-length bob, which is long twists, can be found amongst the Maasai of Kenya. And finally, the tripartite style, which is full-length twists or individual locks of thin to medium size, is a universal African trend. Other styles acknowledged are the globular, the sweatback, the side plait, and the duplex buffant plaited, which are all basically variations of these aforementioned styles. The hairstyles used by the Kemetic infantry and villagers, which you will find in widespread use amongst the Oromo. This hairstyle is essentially a flat-topped afro. So, as you can see, it is patently obvious that all hairstyles seen in ancient Egypt are only achievable naturally with curly African or Afro hair texture, hence the Eurocentric dependence on the unsubstantiated claim of widespread wig use. You will note a total inability to cite any remotely Asian, Eurasian, or non-African hairstyles throughout dynastic Egypt. This fact remains a troublesome inconvenience for modern dissenters of the obvious African origin of Nile Valley civilization. Unfortunately, Tassie's 200-page report remains largely disjointed due to his general ignorance of modern African hairstyles.
Let me stop right there. There's a natural break in the video, and I want to say this. Now, I don't know. It would have been, I don't know whether you know this yourself, but within Nigerian, I say Nigerian, Nigeria is an artificial construct. Within the Yoruba nation, and I keep referencing the Yoruba nation, not because I'm, I obviously am because that is my heritage, but not in this context because I'm prejudiced, but it's the only experience I can speak from as a Yoruba man myself. So within the Yoruba tradition, when you said this about the different hairstyles being, as Tassi, again, it's important, a Caucasian academic has noted himself, as Tassi notes himself, these hairstyles in ancient Egypt were a sort of a uniform that represented your class or your profession, your vocation. Priests had certain stuff. When I was listening to this, I thought, whoa, I stopped. And I said, there you go again, Africanicity all over it. Because growing up, I was told by my mom, I had this thing. I wanted to dread. I'm an African kid who's plunked right in Europe, and I'm looking around. I'm seeing my Black, British, Jamaican friends in school with these braids and whatnot. And I'm saying to my mom, I want braids too. I want braids. I want to have cornrows and whatnot. And she's like, what? Don't you know what that means? Now, obviously, as an African person, she still understands why we, like, what the braids themselves had a meaning. And she was saying to me, she said to me that, like, why would you want cornrows? Why would you want that? I said, well, it's cool. She said, no, that's what the Shango is the god of thunder. That's what the priests of Shango, that's what they wear. That's their identification. And I was like, what are you talking about, man? Woman, listen, I want my cornrows. She was like, we're Christians, we're not pagans anymore. We're Christians, so we're not, no son of mine is gonna be wearing a cornrow. At the time I didn't understand that. I was like, whatever. But when I'm watching this video, I'm thinking, I remembered and I think, so even in Yoruba society, wearing your
Yes.
hair in a particular, braiding your hair as a man in a particular style signified that, look, that man is one of the priests of Shango, being the god of thunder, is one of the
Yeah.
priest class of the thunder god. And I'm thinking,
Yeah.
whoa, as you said that, as you quoted in Tassi, but that's, I'm just going to leave that there. I don't know if you knew that yourself, but if it surprises you or whatever.
No, it doesn't surprise me. It's kind of twofold, because on the one hand, yes, there's those remnants of kind of ethnotrichology across African cultures, but on the other hand, you have to balance that up with the fear that was instilled, and actually normally on the back of Christianity. I know you're a Christian, but normally on the back of Christianity, there was a fear that was instilled of traditional practices. So going back to our conversation earlier, hairstyles were outlawed, and that edict would have come from the colonial powers. Yeah, this is something that they knew was powerful in terms of the way the society organized itself. So they outlawed it. I grew up Nigerian as well, but all of my uncles had short level clipped hair. Yeah, if your hair in Nigeria, if your hair gets too troublesome, your mum gonna chop it off. You could be a girl or a boy. You know what I'm trying to say? It's a very short-tempered relationship with hair. Particularly, I'm not talking about now. Obviously, now there's been a lot of growth. But if you're talking about when I was young, talking about in the '90s, visiting Nigeria in those years, there's very short-tempered relationship with hair. And you have to understand the origins of that comes from our hairstyles being outlawed. Because if you go back, if you look at the statues, look at the statues in Benin, they have the Kemetic hairstyles, they have the short twist. When have you seen someone in Benin wearing the short twist? When have we seen Africans wearing, so these hairstyles were outlawed. That was a part of what took place, was the outlawing of the hairstyles. And then we have this very much military. If you look across Africa, most of Africa is just military hair, isn't it? You think it's just all buzz cut. Obviously now there's more expression coming with our creative side and Afrobeat and this. But if you look historically, Africa's had military hairstyle imposed across the continent, because there's been a removal of our understanding and our connection with kind of like anthropology.
Of course.
So I think there's that as well.
And it would have terrorized someone who's alien to that culture and who didn't. I mean, the British and the Europeans didn't have that in their culture. So you're coming to a completely strange land, a soil that you shouldn't be on. You got no business being on that soil in the first place, telling people what to do and how to do this and that. And now you're seeing these black faces with these hairstyles that you can't make head or tail of, that makes people look like
terrified. I'm glad you used that word. It would have been terrifying for them to see Africans exercising. Look at the old pictures of the Rwandans, when they're already blooming the size of Dinka, they're already 6'6" tall, whatever, these Tutsi men. And then they've got these massive hairs. They would have been petrified of Africans in their raw ethnotrichological form. They would have been absolutely terrified. So obviously, what does a colonial power do? It bans it. A massive nation for ethnotrichology, once again, was the Congo. What's been one of the most oppressed nations in the history of Africa? The Congo.
Congo, yeah.
Do you see any expressions of ethnotrichology in modern Congo?
Wow.
Yeah, it's gone. Wow. Okay, all of those expressions of ethnotrichology, they were one of the first things that were outlawed.
Wow. And it's gonna come up in this video, but I'm just gonna preempt it now and say that some of these, because you mentioned Tassi didn't know anything, he didn't know what he was talking about when talking about these statues and these hairstyles. Okay, now we could go into, okay, Vic, just stop, just control yourself. Don't preempt too much. Okay, what I wanted to say is this. In this paper, I think Jeffrey Tassi himself decries the the notion that these are helmets. But I had to do a massive, when I was taking notes in this video, I had to do a massive exclamation mark there. You mean to tell me, we will come to it in this video, but you mean to tell me that they looked like these experts looked at these Egyptians with their statues and on the wall paintings and thought they were looking at helmets when they saw African hair?
I don't think they did. I just think they're just very inept liars.
Right.
I don't think they did. I don't think they've ever convinced themselves outside of the Egyptian hairstyles being African hair. That's why they've had to kind of settle on the fact that they're Nubian hairstyles and then just not talk about it. They like go, oh yeah, the Egyptians wore Nubian hairstyles. And then they just kind of like, on the next subject, they don't want to talk about it because everyone in their heads going, but didn't you say that they also proved that they enslaved the Nubians and all this crap they make up? Didn't you say that the Nubians are beneath them? So why are they copying the Nubian hairstyle? Oh, it doesn't matter. They don't even touch on it, because it completely blows everything they say out of the water if they say their entire physical beauty system was based on African culture. It doesn't make any sense.
Why are we basing our physical beauty? I had slides ready for this, but I just thought, you know what, I want the king to talk on this. But in my slides, there was just, when you get these images come up on Google, you get these stupid asinine, completely non-commonsensical explanations. Head of a Nubian, and it's like, no, it's not a head of a Nubian. If you find this in Egypt, this is okay, fine. You've got heavily Negroid features there, but if you find this in Egypt, there's nothing telling you that this is a depiction of a Nubian. You can this hairstyle you can see on the walls. You can, I'm just gonna stop there and I'm play the video because I could just run and I don't want to do that. So.
Rant on, brother.
There seems to be little academic effort when it comes to relating modern African hairstyles to the crowns of kings and queens seen in Kemet. Let's take a closer look at the white crown of Upper Kemet called the Hedjet. This crown conforms to a hairstyle adopted throughout Africa in various forms. In Benin, it can be seen in these upright bridal styles. Whereas in Rwanda it is reflected in the style called urugori, where the hair is pulled upright and rounded in a similar fashion. In addition to this, in southern and central Africa, the traditions of Lipombo and Isikolo practiced amongst the Mangbetu and Zulu respectively also demonstrate the cylindrical upright nature seen in the Hedjet, but the style is achieved through the intricate braiding and weaving of African locks. The most strikingly similar example of the Hedjet is found in pre-colonial...
I just wanted to say, this lady right here, there's a very badly damaged miniature statue. I don't know what it's made out of, ivory or something. This lady looks like Khufu. She looks like Khufu's got this hairstyle or crown. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, where his nose is...
I do. I know exactly what you're talking about.
She looks like him. She looks like
exactly what you're talking about. I never saw that till you said it. I'd be interested to know who this lady is as well, because actually one of the things that dawned on me and I started realizing afterwards is that a lot of those pictures, for instance, in Rwanda, of people wearing their hairstyle in Amasunzu, and it looks like the Capresh, they weren't normal. Those are royalty. They were very high, either high aristocracy princes or rulers. But we just think we just see these pictures and think, oh, this is just a Tutsi hairstyle. No, it's not just a Tutsi hairstyle. These are very senior people. These are high-born aristocracy in that society because of these rules of ethnic trichology. And I think one of the reasons I found that out is because the last king of Rwanda, he's in one of the pictures, and I didn't realize it till afterwards. It was a thing. I was like, oh, that's the last king, and he's got his hair it's in a Capresh style, but it's slightly shorter. And he used to mix up quite a bit. But yeah, the point being that is like sometimes when you see these really dramatic hairstyles, obviously now we just do it for style, but when these pictures were taken, these styles meant something. There's probably some kind of story of birth or aristocracy. There could be. I'm not sure in the Nigerian case, but obviously I know that to be the case when I was looking at the pictures of the Rwandans, that was the case.
Thank you for that. Right, play.
This, or something close to it, is a likely candidate for the base of the Headrests. In all of these styles, beads or fabric can easily be used to finish the look in the likeness of the Kemetic Headrest. In the case of Kemet, the style would likely be covered in felt and secured with a diadem denoting kingship, as supported by the words of Diodorus Siculus. He states, when speaking of African and Kemetic shared cultures, their kings, who wear high felt hats which end in a knob at the top, are circled by the serpents which they call asps, end quote. And as demonstrated, it would have been impossible to make this crown stand erect without the sturdy and malleable texture of African hair sitting beneath the fabric coating.
So just to jump in there as well.
Yes, I thought you
So
would.
we're going to say something. You go.
Well, all I would no, you go, because this is your field. This is your this whole thing is about you. Come on, bro.
No, the only thing I was going to say was just going to point out the importance of the uraeus, which is the gold band, which is the crown, by the way, or which is the significant part. If the Europeans are looking for a crown, then they're not going to find anything more than the uraeus, which they already, like in Tut's case, they found the uraeus. He was wearing his uraeus. Yeah. So the uraeus is the gold band with the Cobra, and sometimes the falcon on it, but normally just the Cobra. That was the kind of signifier to say I am the ruler when worn around the hairstyle, wherever the hairstyle was, whatever crown style, I should say, wherever crown styles worn. But the uraeus is the thing that was kind of like, from what I've seen, it was almost transferable. So you could wear the same uraeus with different crown styles. So you could wear it with the cut.
Because it's just a band going around it.
Just the band, exactly.
Wow. And I was going to say this. When you mentioned a quote there, it's from Diodorus Siculus. Diodorus Siculus, for anyone who doesn't know, is a Greek historian who talks about the Egyptians in no other terms than that they are black. He talks about all the peoples, the nations of peoples living along the Nile. They're flat-nosed, thick-lipped, black-skinned, woolly hair. That's what he says. Woolly hair.
And you are the quote master, by the way.
Huh?
I've got to do my reaction. I said you are the quote master when it comes to this subject. So this is your special subject now. The quotes.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'm out here blushing. But listen, he speaks about this in no equivocal terms. So, and I always see. I was gonna drop this in another video, but I'll say it now in the live. The situation with this debate about who were the Egyptians is like, the analogy that's come to my mind is like, you're playing a game with somebody who's a sore loser, and every time you beat them, fair and square, they come up, they say, well, the game's obviously rigged towards you, so we need to, that's not proper. We need to start this game properly, change this rule because it's rigged towards your talent. So, okay, and you being magnanimous, say you're an older brother, okay, fine, let's play your way. We'll play it that way. No, you win again. Oh, well, it's clearly rigged because this, that, and the other. And then you play it another way because until you finally get to a point where this sore loser individual can actually find himself on a fairly level playing field. Now he's happy to play with you. That's
the only game he'll want to play from there on in as well.
Exactly. That's what this debate seems like because, and I say that because you notice now all of this evidence from ancient history that shows, in the very least, if you wanted to say, okay, fine, I still disagree that they were all black, right? But sizable amount of them was black. So every time that we talk about the ancient Egyptians and we do movie portrayals of them, I don't have to freak out. Okay, fine. It would be respectable to have that position and say, look, okay, fine. There was a sizable black component, so I don't have to freak out every time you make a film and say it's Afrocentrism. That would be respectable, but you don't
Yeah.
have that. These people want all the cards, and the people that want
Yeah.
that are playing for all the chips are also now, they found something. They found a way to play the game, and that way is genetics. With genetics, which are rigged, the way they do their genetics are rigged, and what they don't tell you, and that whole thing is a minefield in itself. But my point about this is that the genetics thing is tantamount to playing this person that you constantly beat, and now they found genetics, and that's the only way they want to play it. They don't want to talk to you about Diodorus siculus. They don't want to talk to you about the numerous depictions that show them as negritic. They don't want that. They just want to say, like the commenter in the King's Monologues video on this topic, well, what about the genetics? Oh, so now it doesn't matter about these quotes. Now it's just genetics.
I mean, genetics is such a loaded subject. You know, I've touched on it. I don't know if you do know actually, but I've touched on it multiple times on my channel. And one of the things that you'll know actually is it's not a subject that I've ever tried to base kind of like solid arguments on. I try to avoid it as much as possible and focus on anthropology. And I don't avoid it because I'm scared of the outcomes.
No, of
I
course.
avoid it because we're playing on a very unlevel playing field, like you just highlighted there. The situation with genetics is that the classification of genetics is Eurocentric. So what we're looking at with genetics is nothing wrong with obviously what's being drawn from people in terms of genetic data. Although actually I heard with the PCR that is wrong as well. I don't know if you heard, but apparently PCR, the way it works, the way it amplifies your signal
Yes, it can give you
the gap. Yeah.
yes,
And
yes,
it's using Eurocentric data to do the gap filling.
right.
So what it comes out with in the end is normally more leaning towards a European, because it's using Eurocentric algorithms to do the gap filling in the genetic data. I only heard that the other day. I need to look into it some more. But when I heard it, I was like, oh, bloody hell, that makes sense. Because I always thought, how does amplification work? What do you mean genetic amplification? Like, you know, if there's a gap, there's a gap. You can't just guess what was there. Like, how does that work? Well, yeah, apparently that's how that works. And they lean on the fact that, well, most people with this gap had this kind of data, but then the problem is their data is leaned, 99-1 in favor of European samples.
It's the kind of thing. It's the kind of thing that you can easily manipulate. When I heard,
Yes.
I'm not gonna go down this route, but when I heard PCR is one of the main components of doing these genetic tests, my feelers went massively up. I said PCR, the same PCR that was used in something very recently to just anyway, I'll leave that to the side. And I thought, oh, right, that's the name of the game. It's the genetics thing is a minefield for a particular reason. But somebody in the chat just recently said, even with genetics, they're wrong anyway. Done properly, even with genetics, they're wrong. But let's move that.
100%. I agree with that. But I just wanted to add to that point as well. Even with genetics, they're wrong. I agree with that point 100%. But even on top of that as well, I am very, very uncomfortable with the marker classifications as well. And I've mentioned that on multiple occasions. They classify in markets. It's like Africa gets zero respect. It's like on an anthropological level and a historical level, they know that everyone comes from Africa. But Europe is like this magnet, transformational magnet that instantly, the moment anything touches that continent, it becomes it. And the only way something doesn't become European is that it has to have complete separation from it.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and that's what you essentially have. There's no question, like in terms of these, I view all markers as African because mankind's African. Yeah. So unless they change that story about the origins of mankind, which they might do, but until they change that story, then everything is an African. Don't come to me and say, oh, well, this marker is West Asian. It's like, no, it's not, it's African because man came from Africa. He might have stayed there for a few thousand years, but if it came back to Africa, then it was African again. You know, like it doesn't make any sense to me how things can be argued that they're from a different geolocation.
Well, what was telling to me about this, what really opened my eyes about, see, I come to this wanting to give the other side as much benefit of the doubt. At least I came to it as from a position of wanting to give the other side as much benefit of the doubt as possible, because I didn't want to do this thing of, well, supporting it, because obviously if the ancient Egyptians were black people, that makes me look good. I didn't want to be that guy. I didn't want to be that guy who supports something that just because it favors me. Okay. So I kept on giving the benefit of the doubt. And this is something I can't explain to people who haven't seen it yet. You can't. You have to see it for yourself. The duplicity surrounding this debate is so much that after you've seen enough of it, nothing the other side tells you do you take on face value at all ever again.
Yeah.
Because this genetics thing, you had Kweli Mika's video on this is brilliant. If anyone's not watched it, it's actually brilliant. This guy goes through how, and I know you've done work on this as well. This guy, he did almost an hour-long video showing you how the same genetic markers they claim prove that the Egyptians were related to Near Eastern or Europeans can be found within the heart of Africa. Can be found within the heart, but they don't. It's what they don't tell you. So when I came to that, I thought, oh, this is a bit of a sticky place. Okay, fine. The debate is on an even level playing field again. But until I watched Kweli Mika's video and I saw, oh my goodness, why didn't they say that? Because if you can find the same genetic markers within Africa, how does this prove anything?
Because they and this is just it. It's because they determine markers by frequency, and I've explained this 100 times. They determine markers by frequency, and I always speak about the fact that Africans are hugely genetically diverse. So we don't have the kind of dominance in single marker groups that they have in Europe. You know, in Europe and in some parts of Asia as well, you get these very, very dominant marker groups where like 80% carry the same uniparental lineage of Y-DNA or something like that. You'll never get that in Africa. You know, you just won't get it. Africa is far too diverse, so you'll have, for something to be a high frequency, you know, it's like if 8% of the population carries, like, whoa, that's massive in Africa. Because Africa is hugely genetically diverse. Now, what they'll say is that, well, this marker is at high frequency, so therefore it originated there. And now that doesn't make any sense. And this is the thing. There's no way geneticists are making this error, because there's only two possibilities. If a marker has a really high frequency in a single population, so let's take Ireland, for instance, who are 99%, I think 99% R1b, something ridiculous like that. Almost the entire population carries the R1b lineage. Yeah? So there's two possibilities there. Possibility number one is that a small population carrying that moved into that nation and then multiplied whilst they were there with each other endogenously / inbred, yeah? and produced an entire population carrying the same marker. The other possibility is that marker was birthed in that nation whilst the Irish were there, and then someone carried the person who birthed it in that nation went around, interbred with everyone, and his ancestors killed everyone else carrying different markers, so that only his marker reflects the entire nation.
Right.
Those are the only two possibilities you have there.
Of course.
Now, the second possibility is stupid. Just because no one's trying to preserve markers, because markers didn't even exist to humans until 30 years ago. These kind of like, uniparental markers, yeah? So it was obviously carried in. That's the only way you can get high frequencies. So when they try and claim markers like R1b, R1b is the European marker. No, it just means everyone in Europe is the son of an African. And when that split occurred, it's very likely maybe, let's say there were 100 people carrying that marker. It maybe took two of them to go to Europe and give you all that marker, yeah, to establish the white European civilization. But that means the other 98 remained in Africa. No one takes up. People got this idea of migration, which is very much perpetuated by modern day genetics, actually. They've got this idea of migration where whole populations will move into an area, yeah? And then something will happen, and then that entire population, they'll shout, everybody, we're leaving. And all 100,000 people will get up and move to a new place and leave that first place empty. That has happened in the history of mankind only in the cases of genocide. Yeah? It doesn't happen where people just get up and everyone moves. Some people will move, probably a small proportion are, we're going to go and we're going to move here. The rest will stay. There's constant diffusion. And this is the reason why every single marker that you'll find around the rest of the world, like you touched on earlier, you will find it in Africa. Every single marker.
Whereas you
They
don't
will
find that
always
the
give
other way
credence,
around.
yeah. Yes, exactly. And they will
Right.
always give credence to the markers that are found outside of Africa, to the outside population, and not to the indigenous African population.
Right,
That's why I'm not going to go into genetics anyway. I hate the subject, to be totally honest with you. But there's, on a logical basis, there's so many things that are just like, these don't make sense. You're trying to sell this to people, but your story behind the origins of this marker makes zero sense.
And it's the fact that this is the thing. I constantly have. I'm a cynical person by nature, but I have to say, I don't know how much of that is just my nature or the things I've seen. When you see this, okay, when you see an article that purports to be academic, purports in, well, let's say in a broadsheet that purports to give academic news and leaves out key information like this, you have only you're talking about people writing, people commissioning these academic things, right? And are leaving, academic people, great experts supposedly, and they're leaving important, crucial things like this in like the small print at the bottom of the article. That's not by accident. Sorry. Something so crucial to your understanding of the data that you're looking at isn't being left in the bottom or of the abstract or as an addendum unless you have an agenda. So it takes people like you, Kweli Mika, pointing out these things before you realize, oh, okay, so that's what's really going on. This is why I talk about my cynical nature. That it comes from that. It comes from seeing things like that. It comes from saying to myself, I'll never ever be, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. It comes from that. It comes from coming to this debate even-handed and thinking everyone around you is coming to even-handed, and then having to discover things like this from so-called Afrocentrists like yourself. After a point, you realize, okay, so this is the game you guys are playing. So
it's definitely a game of Yahtzee. They're constantly giving us double or nothing. We beat them,
yeah.
And then it's constantly moving.
Let me play this. King, I want to say to you, please give me at the very most another, dare I say it, 40 minutes. And I will let you go. I know it's late right now in the UK time, but just spare me another 40 minutes, please. I beg you.
It's Sunday tomorrow, so let's go.
Thank you. That's why Deliberately scheduled it for a Saturday. Thank you, bro. All right, let's play this video.
Let's now look at one of the most prolific and certainly the most iconic headdresses in ancient Egypt. This headdress is the Nemes. However, what might be unknown is the intrinsic relationship this headdress shares with one of Africa's most popular hairstyles, a hairstyle universal amongst Africans globally that I had previously coined as the Kemetic short twist. The short twist, one of the most common hairstyles in Kemet, became almost a nationally adopted adornment amongst the middle class by the middle of the Old Kingdom, and in other cultures across the diaspora they are referred to as starter locks, since they provide the foundation for growing hair into longer locks. Egyptologists have had the historic trend of describing this particular style as headgear. Fortunately, it is finally being acknowledged that these are hairstyles, not helmets. Tassi states the use of the word headgear is most inappropriate and implies that the deceased are wearing hats rather than wigs or their own styled hair that are actually being depicted. Although allegedly a wig, the mummy of Mahrepri shows what the beginnings of this locking process looks like as it is taking shape. From the late period onwards, Roman artists, when depicting Egyptians, tended to show a more natural, organic nuance and variety of the style, as they observed it amongst the indigenous Kemetic population. Let's now take a closer look at the relationship between...
Yeah, go on.
I just wanted to add as well that hairstyle seemed to be not even just Egyptians, but across the melanated world, seemed to be one that Black people really favored in the ancient world. It's actually, I wouldn't say it's hard to find, but I'd say it's probably one of the most dominant hairstyles. You see Phoenicians with it as well. Africans just loved twisting their hair back in the day. And it was interesting to see that there seemed to be a length protocol in Kemet where your twists aren't really supposed to grow beyond a certain length unless you're of a certain tier of aristocracy. So not people weren't just allowed to grow their hair into really long shoulder length twists. That was a no-no. Well, men, I would say, that's a no-no. That was a scribe or a priestly style. It wasn't something that you don't really see the attribution of that hairstyle to people who aren't either aristocratic or of the priesthood. And then obviously it gets even longer when we're talking about the ruler. So we're talking about the king or the Nezut. He would probably have the long like we see with Josa, Amenemhat the third, full length locks. We don't ever see, at least from my knowledge, I don't think so. Yeah, we don't ever see anyone else but pharaohs with those very long full length locks. And that was married with wearing it with the Nemes.
Amazing. What you're allowed to, because this is your moment, this is your thing, but you're preempting the video. Don't preempt the video. You say that in this brilliant video coming up just now. I'm gonna press play again.
Cool.
Nemes crown. However, in direct reference to the Nemes, we can see in this statue of Menkaure the short twist being slightly exposed beneath the headdress. A massive clue to the length and volume of the twists can be seen in the back of the names that universally appears to cause it to bulge, much like traditional African hair caps at the back.
Okay, let me stop now and say, did everybody see that? Did everybody see Menkaure, 4th dynasty, I think it was labeled as? Did you see the locks coming out of his hair? When I saw this, my mind was blown. I said, wow, you've actually got his hair. They say this goes against several arguments that they like to make to fit their narrative. They say these are standardized statues. That's detail. That's not that you don't get in a standardized statue. That's just that's a lock. That's locks of hair, dreadlocks, it seems, or the remains, the extra bits of a I can't remember what that style that you
short twist.
Short twist. Thank you. The remnants of the residual parts of a short twist coming out, protruding out of this cap that the pharaoh's wearing. That's amazing detail, attention to detail. So you're seeing this, and again, this argument of wigs, they were all wearing wigs. Who in their right mind, wears this heavy looking crown. No, not heavy looking, but who wears this fabric over a wig in the heat of like the Sahara or the Sahel anyway. Who does that?
Yeah. Indeed. I mean, yeah, absolutely. It's ridiculous, and it's because they can't connect with the culture. That's the bottom line. They can't
Yeah.
connect with the culture.
Yeah.
When you show them, actually, when we as Africans recognize, actually, those, that Nemes, I recognize that bulge instantly as an African, And like, that's a hair bulge. And you can't tell me otherwise. Yeah. Tell me what else is making that bulge like that. Was it filled with air? Like, did they have a pump? Was that what that tail was pumping air into there? No, this is a hair bulge. We've seen this before. We as Africans know what we're looking at. These are just modifications of the same thing. So yeah, it's a good point. At the end of the day, how do you talk about your point that you raised earlier regarding the hair beneath the Nemes shown on Menkauri's crown? Even more ludicrous is the fact that they think that the Egyptian infantry was wearing wigs. March 4. Like, come on, man.
Well, in the heat of battle, I'm just gonna
Yeah.
let me make sure my wig is on point.
Keep it on, lads.
Keep them wigs on.
Flipping it, man.
Nah, this weren't no Grecian army. Nah, we don't roll like that. If you know what I mean. Right, let me press play.
Ignored detail is occurrent in every single depiction of the Nemes, this bulge being indicative of dreadlock caps found throughout Africa and the diaspora. A unique feature of the Nemes was the way the fabric joined into a single lock knot at the base.
Sorry, just pause there.
Yep.
I really like that image of showing Tut in his Nemes, and then next to it, you see him with his hair loose. Do you shabtis? I just really love the fact that they're both available so people can see the comparison. You can see what he's basically showing you, what was beneath it, and then when he's wearing his crown, which I just thought was a really cool, a really cool contrast to see both of those. But yeah, that was it really.
I'm just gonna go slightly back so that people can maybe see that again. That one right there.
Yeah, I love that. And by the way, this one on the left, I literally did a short about it. Did you see the short I did about this yesterday? I posted a short about this.
About the skink, the restoration?
Yes.
Yes, I saw that.
Left. This one on the left should be dark chocolate brown. They literally sanded him down to the wood and then repainted his lips and put some eyeliner on him. It was dark brown. There's other Ushabtins you can compare it with to get that exact dark chocolate brown color, and they literally sanded the entire statue down. You can see what it's like when they found it. It still had the lower half of his face was still dark brown. So these people, they've got no shame.
So let me. If you've not seen that, guys, the king is referencing a short. He's freshly squeezed, freshly out. You need to go and see that. He's caught them red-handed. Now they will have their plausible deniability ready, but he's caught them red-handed, where they're sanding down the proper brown color of Tutankhamun to the point where the brown is completely off. He shows that, he evidences that in about a minute in a YouTube short. So if you got time, check that video out. That's all I'll say about that. Anyway, let me press play.
Nemes was the way the fabric joined into a single lock knot at the base. These details coalesced beautifully to give the wearer of these illustrious crowns an appearance similar to the African Cobra, who was also present on the uraeus. Could the Nemes perhaps be a lasting legacy of the first dynasty ruler Jet, who is also known as the Serpent King? Interestingly, Jet as a ruler predates the earliest depiction of a Nemes in Kemet. On the rare occasion that the twists were too long to be contained, the locks were encouraged to protrude beyond the edges of the Nemes, as famously demonstrated.
Can I just pause there very quickly?
Wow. Yes, please go on.
Sorry, I did want to talk a bit about the depiction of, because I'm not sure what the significance of it is, but it was just literally something that I saw, obviously with the head of the Nemes making the ruler appear like a cobra. You know, it's like right there in your face. I would love more on that subject and that topic because the patterning is clear. It looks like it's very deliberate, particularly with the lateral lines. You can see them here on Joseph's Nemes.
Yeah.
You can see it's very deliberate, but I'd love more detail as to what the implications were, why. You know, obviously, you know that I think the Cobra was a representation of goddess in Medunetta.
Right.
So when you wanted to describe a goddess, you would use the Cobra. But I don't know. I don't know I don't know how I draw a link there. It's just an interesting thing. So I'm sure there's always knowledgeable people in the group who I'm sure could add to that. It's just something I wanted to put out there, put the energy out there, and see if I could glean some more knowledge about
Okay.
why
Well,
the
one thing
Cobra.
is clear. I like the Cobra angle, and I think it's the only thing that makes sense, really. Not again. These people in their hatred for, and there's only one word for it, and it is hatred. In their hatred for blacks or us, this is the definition, the metaphorical perfection of that phrase: cutting your nose to spite your face. You are losing so much as an academic, as somebody who says you're an aficionado of the ancient Egyptian world. You're losing so much by pretending these people weren't African. If you actually want to know about these people, so there's a lady. I don't want to mention her name because it's I don't want to give the game away. I'm gonna do a video on. She's gonna be featuring in one of my videos upcoming, God willing. But she does an academic piece on the Badari culture, which was a culture that, if you've got your head screwed on properly, you can't see anything but black people. Okay, but she has a piece, an artifact from the Badarian, supposed to be from the Badarian culture, and she's got a video out on YouTube where she's presenting these artifacts from the Badarian culture. If you don't know, the Badarian culture was a pre-dynastic Egyptian culture, civilization. So before the pharaohs were institutionalized and before we had the dynasties and all that, the Badarian culture was a civilization that was around in Egypt. And there's a particular piece in these, mainly it's vase work, it's pottery and whatnot. But there's a particular piece that you cannot deny the Africanicity of. You cannot deny that this is a black child that you're looking at. And in a document, in a paper on this, she says, obviously it's a child wearing some sort of a wig. I don't know that the Nubian features are, and something along those lines. And you think to yourself that, hang on a minute, you're downplaying the Nubian features of the individual that you're looking at, and in one fell swoop, you're also saying that the hair that you can see is a wig. This is a paper that's as recent as, I think it's in the 2010s decade, and I'm thinking, this is insane. What tells you that this is a wig? This is a black child with a wig on in the domain of ancient Egypt. And instead of just coming out and letting the evidence speak for itself, you're coming up with all these elaborate. And then, so interestingly, I found the video of her presenting her finds, what she does in this paper. And I had to fast forward. I went through this almost 2-hour long video just to find where she talks about this particular piece. And I found it. And I wondered what she was going to say. And she'd been so verbose, so chatty about all the pieces before that were very vague vases with vague markings on them. But when she comes to this intricately sculpted African child, you could have heard the silence in the room. She said nothing about it. She just went on to the next slide. She just went on to the next slide. I was like, this man are mad. This is... It was unbelievable. But anyway, that's a diversion, that digression. Just
It's a good diversion because it explains how they cope. And no, I know cope is a bit of a thrown out phrase today in meme culture or whatever, but that's how they cope. They cope with ancient Egypt by just ignoring the black parts. That's the only way they can cope. It's Nubian hair. Move on. Oh, he looks a bit black here. Move on. It's like they have to just kind of like pretend they haven't seen it and then put it to the back of their mind. Because if I was trying to sustain this illusion that ancient Egypt was anything other than black, and I was confronted with the kind of data that we can see in this video and we see every day, I would go mad.
Yeah, yeah,
To be
you
quite
would. You would. And I'm looking at this statue now in this video of Josa, and I'm thinking to myself, how you can look at this and come to any other conclusion than that at least as early as the 4th dynasty, these men are brothers. I don't know how you can come to any other conclusion. You look at this and it's just stupid. By the way, this statue itself, I've seen other renditions of it, and it looks like they're progressively whitewashing this one as well, because I keep seeing recent takes of this and the brown seems to be coming off every time I see it. I don't know. Maybe I'm just being
No,
paranoid.
You're probably right. I didn't even know it had any brown in it, to be honest with you, before. I just knew it was black from the features.
Of course.
But you know, don't put it past them that what we must do, and actually what I'm making a habit of doing now, even though the short might have just seemed like a bit of fun, the one I did yesterday, I'm now going to document every time I see an abuse like that, even if it's in a short or something, because what I'll eventually do is I'll create an anthology of all of this stuff and present it, because it's really important that, particularly in this internet age, that we don't take for granted that they are continuing to destroy Egyptian artifacts and deface them and to change them, to change the color of them. And if we don't preserve what they originally look like, they'll be gone for good.
Yeah.
Someone sent me a video about the tomb of Nefertari. I don't know if you know about that one in Egypt. It's the tomb of Nefertari Merit, the wife of Ramesses.
No, tell me about
Ramesses' favorite wife. So they've just opened that tomb after 20 years of quote unquote restoration.
Wow.
It's the most expensive tomb to visit in Egypt. It'll cost you £36 or something like that to enter it, and you get 20 minutes in and out, no photos, no evidence, no video, nothing. Just walk around it and then out. I watched a documentary about this. The tomb it looks like it was painted yesterday with Dulux. And they've said, oh no, we just did restoration. Every single image of Nefertari Merit, who by the way was a Nubian on historical record. She wasn't an Egyptian who they said was Nubian. She was actually a Nubian. They've made her pink in every single stele of her. They've changed her skin color to pink. And you know we don't see pink on any genuine Egyptian artworks. You'll never see a pink person. Yeah, so brace yourself for that. This is what they continue to do.
This is war. This is actually waging war on. Okay, all right.
They got no
I'm gonna press play.
It's important to note the Nemes was never created to flap around on a bald-headed king as demonstrated in Hollywood reproductions. These Hollywood representations are an invention.
I just want to say, look, just one comment there. I know you. If I didn't say it, you were probably gonna jump in and say it. This blew my mind as well. I never saw this film that Christian Bale or whatever is in, but Moses or something. This is stupid. Look at how that crown flaps on this bald-headed king. Look, what we've been seeing, we've been showing ourselves now, just the last 5 minutes or so, again and again, statues of this, what's it called again? Minis, worn properly.
Yeah.
Worn properly, and it's bulging. You can see because it contains hair. And when these people do their little costume party,
their cosplay is ridiculous. It's gross. It actually makes me throw up now. Before I used to be kind of like apathetic, but now it actually makes me sick. It's like there's nothing about let's put their the Nemes aside and just look at his entire outfit, there's nothing about his outfit that is ancient Egyptian at all. Okay? Ancient Egyptians didn't shield their entire bodies from the sun. Even the pharaohs were bare chested with just their neck beads. Yeah? Bare chested you should be as the pharaoh.
Right.
Yeah, but you're not gonna do that because you're not melanated, and we all know what 30 minutes in the Egyptian sun will do to your skin. Yeah. Then you've got the Nemes flapping, well, with that
Flapping in
tablecloth
the
flapping
wind.
about on his head. And they do that deliberately because what they want to do is they want to create a kind of non-tangible cultural tie to modern Arabs. It kind of looks a bit like a
Right.
dish dash.
Right.
That's what they're trying to do. That's why they have salt. That's why about 6 people were wearing it as he was walking past.
But that's something that was only reserved for the king, surely.
Exactly. Why are the general public all wearing crowns? Because you're idiots. That's why. You're just literally idiots. There's never been someone who was not the ruler wear the Nemes in the history, in the 4,000-year history that we have, recorded history of Kemet. You will never see anyone who's not the pharaoh wearing that. And yet they do it periodically in literally everything they do. Everything they do, they will have everyone wearing the Nemes, but they're doing that because they want it to look like the Arab dish dash, and they want you to kind of feel like, oh, it's kind of like that Middle Eastern culture. It's like, no, dress, if you're gonna do it properly and you're gonna steal the civilization, at least dress like the ancient Egyptians. Dare
Bro.
to do, you know, come on, man.
Bro.
This is a joke.
Oh man, listen. This is. I found in you and in this topic. I found a second soulmate. You're as disgusted by it as I am. Even more so because I've kind of gone to a kind of like a hippie state now where I'm just like whatever. But you get the anger that I felt and that I feel periodically again from time to time now when I look at this stuff, because you're looking at billions of dollars, billions in dollars, right, for a budget for a film, a historical movie. And somebody, I think they just won, Daniel James might have just won the chat today, but they won't boycott that with a laugh emoji.
Yeah.
You hear this fraud that calls himself, and I know we're not supposed to just let sleeping dogs lie, but I'm gonna break my own rule. We have this fraud. We all know what I'm talking about, Mr. M on the other channel. He cannot wait to press the record button whenever.
Oh, yeah,
He's
of course.
talking about Yasuke now. He's having fits about Yasuke. This is
he's
what
a
you're
clown.
watching right now. They won't boycott this. There's no videos
He
about
won't
this.
even mention it. He
This
won't even
sh-
mention it because he's okay with it. You know, he's a clown.
Anyway,
So
whatever.
he's a whole clown. Yeah, I mean, these people are absolutely ridiculous. It's like, I did a post, I think it was earlier today, and I kind of just said, like, in what world is an accurate reconstruction of Queen T controversial, but when they take the bust of Queen T and turn it into a white person, that's totally acceptable.
Yeah.
And that's what they do here. It's like, in what world, like, if we make reconstructions of a pharaoh, it will look exactly like the statue.
Yeah.
If they make reconstructions, they look like this joke that you can see on the screen right now, this cosplay, absolutely ridiculous, like Halloween costume, wearing stupid makeup on his face. The complexion doesn't match anything we've ever seen on a pharaoh in history. And you're putting all these stupid accoutrements on and all these, like, nothing about you looks Kemetic. You look like a modern Arab with a little bit of gold on you.
Yeah.
And yet, we're supposed to we're supposed to resonate with that. We're supposed to be okay with that. Everyone's supposed to be accepting that this is a good depiction of an Egyptian. It's like, come on, man. These days are done. These days are done. Keep it moving.
To fill such a cap, as seen in these contemporary examples. By comparison, Eurasian hair forms in any possible iteration do not provide the shape needed to support the crown's format. It is evident that the rear of the crown is filled with a substantial amount of hair. In contrast to this, the blue skull cap crown that the same king was buried with conformed instead to the shape of his skull. Whether his hair was cut
So this
bald
pause it there.
after
Yeah, paused.
I like that last image. I'm not sure if we could pull it back, but you saw Tut wearing an iteration where of the skull cap, that one there, where the hair is slightly grown out. The reason I like this one is because it supports a point that I make later in the video regarding Urugori. And I think this is to me personally, this is one of a lot of people a lot of people are basically very settled on the fact that there was head binding in ancient Kemet, and what you see in the walls of Armana period, particularly with Akhenaten's daughters, was a depiction of head binding. And I don't think that.
You mentioned that in
I
this
don't think there's
video.
evidence of that. Yeah, I mentioned it in
You
the
put
video,
me,
yeah.
you schooled me on this actually, because I also was thinking it could have been head binding, but in this video you put that to bed actually pretty convincingly. I'm gonna let the
Yeah.
people see that. I'm gonna press play.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say this crown
Sorry, go on.
really quickly. I just like it because it's an intermediary between like the skull cap and the cat. You can see there's kind of like a period of growth that's taken place here with this crown where it's slightly larger. So that's why I just wanted to point out that image.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah.
The cap here isn't just
It
it's not
isn't, yeah, it isn't
just
glued to
a
his
dome,
head. Yeah.
like a little dome, like as usual. It's obviously hair.
Yeah, little grown out afro that's underneath there.
Yeah.
Formed instead to the shape of his skull. Whether his hair was cut bald prior to or after his death is unknown, however. Once again, following the ethno-trichological protocol we've established, the crown of the king conforms to the hair or lack of hair beneath it. This same style is one that had particular popularity amongst the Kushite rulers of the 25th dynasty, such as Taharqa, who is depicted here. The Kushite kings seem to prefer the simplicity of the short-haired crowns as opposed to the complexity of the lengthier ones. Perhaps even more interesting is the crown of Queen T, who once again wears the blue cap crown, although we only have traces of it remaining on this timeless bust.
Wow. I just wanted to stop it there and say that's the same thing that was found. That's the same sort of beaded structure that was found on King Tut's head when he was exhumed, and that's what the king is pointing to here, which obviously evidences that this wasn't a solid unmalleable crown as they tried to portray. This was something quite like the beads of the Benin people that adorn their hair. This was something that was malleable to the person's head. Right, King? Am I right there?
That I think that would be my assumption. In fact, I would suggest that these beads that are, I don't know if you've seen this in person. This head is in the Neues Museum, I think, in Berlin.
No, I've not seen
and it's very small. This bust of Queen T, it's about the size of a tennis ball, so it's really small. It's not big. A lot of people think that when you see it, you think it's like going to be life size, but it's actually about the size of a tennis ball. It's really small. So the reason I say that is because these beads are probably exactly the same beads as the ones that were used in the ones that Tut was buried in, basically. And actually, someone pointed something out to me about this entire hairstyle, because I did like a reconstruction of what this hairstyle might have looked like. And someone pointed out to me, your best example of what this hairstyle might have looked like when it was covered is actually on the golden throne of Tut. Tut's wife is wearing a very similar style. So I don't know if you could pull up Tut's golden throne and just quickly show that, because that might be a very good indication of the style of this crown that Queen T is wearing here. And it would have been consistent then with the Armana family as well.
I'm gonna take a rain check on that just because I don't want I don't want to jinx anything. I don't want anything to go wrong right now. So sorry about that, but I'm just gonna take a rain check and trust your word on that and press play.
Have once been identical to the blue crown that Tut was buried in that it was made up entirely of intricately weaved blue beads, imitating the kinky texture of African hair. and, as always, it would have been finished with a diadem, however, the obvious difference being the volume of the crown adorning her thick and voluptuous afro hair. Judging by its shape, it most likely would have been a soft natural afro, or indeed some kind of looping twists and threaded locks that lay beneath it. Thankfully and unsurprisingly, her husband, Amenhotep
Actually, just
III,
on a quick side note as well that I never mentioned there. When they did an X-ray of that bust of Queen T, allegedly beneath it, they've actually got her in the cut. You know, that crown that we just saw, the one with the afro thing at the back. So, and this is one of the things. A lot of the time with the busts, any bust you find in ancient Egypt, you have to be able to cast your mind forward as to what crown they were going to put on there. And this actually ties in a little bit to what we're going to look at later with, some of those elongated heads. Some of them were elongated with the intention of placing the crown upon them. So they weren't supposed to be seen in that naked format. So that molding was done to make it easier to make the crown sit, if I'm making sense there.
Yeah. And that crown would have obviously been shaped by the hair as well.
Exactly.
Right.
So what you're essentially seeing with that, a lot of the time with the molding, is something similar to the hair beneath the crown, because they want the crown to be able to sit nicely on top of the statue. But what they're not going to do if they're creating a molding is actually draw a hairlining, because what's the point if you're going to put a crown on?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So with Queen T, underneath her that bust, she's actually got a version of it where it's just the cut. So you can see basically how her hair grew over time. I'd imagine that when that bust was made, her hair was slightly shorter, and then they redid the bust as she got older and her hair was larger. So I just find that progress quite interesting, to think there's a smaller cut underneath her where she had slightly shorter hair, and then it's grown to this large afro, so they've kind of like put stucco and wood on top of it to make it even bigger, and then they're going to cover it with beads again. I just find that quite interesting.
Thank you for that. I've just made, I don't know how many Medjay archers, I call them my shooters, are in the chat, but I've just made Wildflower and Nerd Large. I've just made you guys moderators, and you as well, King. I've made you a moderator, but you don't have to, do anything. I think we got a troll, potentially got a troll in the chat. Dasharab, he's just retracted his message. So anyway, nice to see you, Dasharab. Just play nice, and we'll see what's going on. Anyway, so that's Wildflower and Nerd Large. You are moderators now, if there are any trolls in the chat. Thank you.
A wonderful indication of what her hair may have looked like beneath the cover of the beaded crown. For centuries now, archaeologists have hoped in vain to unearth a physical example of the Kepresh, the military crown of war that suddenly came into use during the New Kingdom, following the Second Intermediary Period. Its uniquely sculpted appearance introduced a distinctively new format in Kemetic ethnotrichology. However, their hopes and attempts to envision a solid helmet-type version of this crown is unlikely to yield any results. Clues to the nature of this crown are given to us on statues, statuettes, and stele art, which clearly depict fractal circular patterning throughout the surface of the crown. Bear in mind the established ethno-trichological protocol we've already discussed, and it becomes obvious the nature of this crown once again lies in African hair traditions. In no other place do we see
quick pause.
Go on.
That's just to give a shout out to obviously Sheikh Anta Diop. That was his discovery, and actually that was I would say that was the catalyst for this entire piece of research around the Kemetic crowns. His revelation that A, they were based on African hairstyles, but B, the outer coating or the outer patterning will give you indication of the kind of hair that lies beneath, which is obviously Diop's genius. But when you start relating that to the Kemetic crowns and seeing their very decided use of either stripes or circles, you just have got to take your hat off to his genius again, and then go, bloody hell, how did he figure that one out?
The man was he was obviously devoted. He was obviously devoted to.
Yeah.
He saw what he saw, and he knew he just knew what he was looking at. He knew what he was looking at, and he wouldn't be bullied. A lot of us might have been bullied. I would have possibly just thought, especially in the time that he was working in, where it's not 2024 now, when things are a bit, better in terms of who can pick up a microphone, who can pick up a book and research these things. We are in the information age. But back then, Diop was talk about swimming against the current. Anyway, and as an African as well. Let me just also say, you said something in this video just now that I thought I couldn't help but smile at. You said about the 14-minute mark. You thought, is it the 14 or 15-minute mark? 15 and a half. You just said, unlikely to yield. Their searches are unlikely to yield. Bro, don't be surprised if they all of a sudden magic up some solid ass kepresh somewhere and say, "Oh, we found it." Do you know what I'm trying to say? Don't be surprised because
if they did, I wouldn't fall for it. It's laughable. They're not gonna, I find it actually hilarious when they come up with these. I think Metatron's wearing one, obviously, in one of his thumbnails. When these solid kind of like, it doesn't even look commit. I just did the chin big thing. I haven't done this since I was like 12, but that's how dumb it is. When they do these cosplays, it's just like you're so far from understanding Kemetic culture. It's laughable. You're not gonna find a metal because it was never a helmet. It wasn't a helmet. And we were wearing crowns before Europeans were. We invented the crown, like I said at the very start of this stream. They didn't have crowns. The whole concept of someone, when you think about what a crown is, that's basically saying, I have the most almighty hairstyle in society. That's what it is, isn't it? It's a celebration of the hair, regardless of whether or not the European will make that connection. It's a celebration. It's something you place upon your head. It's a celebration of the hair. And it's saying, I have the most fancy and almighty patterning and accoutrement upon my hair because I am the ruler of this nation. That's an African tradition. You can't equate crowns to societies that have no ethnopsychology. Because where does the idea come from? Why does it matter what's on top of your head when everyone has the same hairstyle? Does that make sense?
Yes, and they're almost they are like, if you're gonna call anything a crown, it's the black hair, particularly the black man's hair, because he can actually grow it naturally and without anything to hold it up, make it in the shape of a crown, and it will stand. Like, it's incredible.
Absolutely.
To create the unique kepresh, then in the Rwandan Amasunzu clearly demonstrating almost identical shapes to the famed war crown. Additionally, the same principles of trichological hierarchy and divine kingship are found amongst the Tutsi. The Tutsi even claim a direct lineage to 19th dynasty rulers that have been preserved in their oral tradition. All of this makes it clear that, like the crowns already discussed, the kepresh was most likely an Amasunzu style, adorned with a diadem and a patterned fabric portraying the African hair beneath it.
Just a quick shout out.
Yes, please.
To Ian Yenzi. I was trying to remember her name earlier. That's the YouTuber who does the links between the Bantu language and ancient, and Meduneta, essentially. And her videos are brilliant. She has some she must just be tapped in with both ancestors and elders, because her knowledge on the subjects are really, I'm very impressed by her videos every time they come out. But just seeing that link drawn between actual Bantu, by the way, as well, because a lot of people don't know what Bantu is. A lot of people think Bantu is everything south of the Sahara, and it's just
Right.
not true.
Right.
You know, there's actual Bantu lineage, and some of the relationships that have been formed between, or at least, yeah, some of that relationships between African languages are false, very false, and they're just based on geographics and Eurocentric thinking and Greenberg's films, which weren't thoroughly thought through or thoroughly investigated. And that's what this is kind of highlighting, or
So
at least her work highlights.
thank you for that shout out. Please, guys, look her up. I think someone typed that name into the chat earlier, much earlier in this evening. So if you can, go to her channel and subscribe as you subscribe to the King and myself as well. Subscribe and support these content creators, because these guys are doing work that like academics are getting paid for in their what's it called, in their universities. They're getting paid big money to lie to us, and we have people going out of their way on our side from from the family, and actually putting out some invaluable work. So whenever you can, not just subscribing, throw them something. It's really this work. I tell you now, this is generational stuff. So yeah, I think I've come across her before as well, and it took me a while before I realized, oh my gosh, she's onto something here, and I
Really solid stuff.
yeah, she's done some great work. All right, I'm gonna press play now.
Yeah.
Finally, we have the Deshret and other iterations of
I'll just pause here and say quickly, looking at this image, this is the Deshret crown, right? This is the lower Egypt crown, right? Or is it the upper?
Yeah.
Right,
That's
the lower Egypt crown. I never saw a version with the same curls being depicted on this as you see on the Kepresh. Wow, I never saw that. So this as well, potentially in some cases, is just hair. Well, we're gonna get to that. We're gonna get you. This video is gonna explain that.
Fortunately, we don't have to imagine what these crowns may have looked like contemporaneously, since we have such striking living examples being used on the African continent. It was not unusual for men along the Nile Valley to cut their afro hair into stylized, modified shapes.
Just to make a quick correction there.
Yes, brother.
King Tutankhamun on his mannequin is not wearing a deshret. That's actually the crown of Amun. It just doesn't have the plumes at the top, but that's actually a depiction of the crown of Amun, Amun-Ra. Which I knew, I don't know how I missed that. But it's still the same shape, so I guess it still stands in that regard.
Yeah.
Who continue to tailor the shapes of their afros in a culturally significant manner. Complementary to this trend, it is believed by some that the modern tradition of the flat top was a cultural inheritance of Rwandan Amasunzu. Could the flat top crown be a heritage of shared origin? It is generally unclear whether coiled locks, braiding, or hair shaping was used to support the deshret. In the Congo,
You know what's interesting? Very quickly.
Yes, brother.
First of all, I was kind of dubious. Can't remember who told me that. I might have actually been in that same video, that same guy who's speaking. I think he mentions, but I didn't put it in the video. Maybe I did, but he mentions that the flat top is a inheritance of Amasunzu. And initially, I was like, "Oh, don't be silly. It's all about American, you know what I mean? Like they did, or it's just." But then I thought back and actually I started looking through images from the 1920s, 1930s. The skinning of the side of your head or the skinning of any part of your scalp is not an old practice. Or at least definitely not in the West. They had lots of hairstyles, but the skinning of the head, as in something what we do now, what we now call the fade, that is a modern inheritance. And I think there may be some credence there having Rwandan origins, maybe linked to, I don't know if it was linked to African Bambata's visit to Africa or if it predates that by a few decades, but it's not old. It's not old. And it would be interesting actually to kind of hear from some Brits / America, some diaspora, as to the earliest expressions of skin fades. I'd be
Correct me
interested
if
to
I'm
know.
wrong. Uganda is next door to Rwanda, right? I think
Is
I think it is right, and that's obviously an artificial line drawn by the Berlin Conference. There's lots of people from the Amasunzu nation that will be within the borders of Uganda today. I'm guessing because
yes,
Wildflower just made a point. She said Maje in Uganda is army, Maje. So linking that to the word Meje. That's
yeah,
interesting. That's
yeah,
interesting. Anyway,
yeah. All Bantu languages, by the way. So
sorry, say that again.
they're Bantu languages, by the way. So the Bantu the kind of the true Bantu language film, they're all very similar. It's kind of like it's quite close to, not close to, but it's quite similar to the Semitic string, where you've got all these Semitic languages like Amhara, Tigray, um, Arabic, but they're all so close that they share many words in kind of key themes. And you get the same thing with the Bantu languages as well. They're quite close. So you'll find there'll be shared themes across those languages. So they're almost dialects of one another.
Thank you.
Hair into flat-topped styles, whereas the Zulu to this day create isikolo hats that uncannily mirror the crown of Lower Kemet. In an almost perfect representation of cultural continuity, one can find these 19th century red isikolo hats, of which it is recorded. This form of the isikolo developed out of a 19th century conical hairstyle that was worn as a sign of respect to one's husband and his family. In the early 20th century, a removable hat like this one replaced the hairstyle. This hat, with its flaring disc-like shape, is constructed of human hair. The reddish hue is the result of the application of a red ochre and fat mixture colorant. Another striking example of the deshret can be found in this intricate hair-shaping technique found amongst the Jimma of Ethiopia. They, similar to the Mangbetu, also possess the
Wow. King.
Yeah.
See, in preparing for this live, I went and collected some images as well. And obviously, I'd never seen this particular hairstyle till I watched this. So I went searching for this to collect in a little folder. But I just have to say, seeing this, and you're gonna show the video is gonna show the back end of this hairstyle. Seeing this complete in my mind convinces me you're gonna have to do something to convince me, something incredible to convince me now that this deshret, I think, wasn't hair. After seeing this and seeing how this, there must have been hair. The similarity between this and then the fact that they've not found these crowns at all.
Yeah.
Like with all the digging and the grave robbing, they've not found these crowns at all. It can only be what we're looking at right now. Anyway, I don't know
they
if you
won't
want to add
find
anything
them.
to that.
Yeah. No, I think we kind of touched on it at the start. I think, as you mentioned this one, because you asked me about the deshret early on, and I said that I think this is, to me, this is the closest one. I know there was or at least I would assume there was also a hollow aspect, because remember when you had the shent, which I think was the combined crown, which combined the deshret with the hejet.
Yes.
You know, the one that when they wanted to show that they were the rulers of the unified Kemet, so they wore the double crown. Okay, so that tells me that the deshret had a hollow aspect to it. Because you need to have the hollow
Yeah,
aspect in
because
order
how
to
are you gonna put that? Yeah, how are you gonna?
exactly in the middle. So that's why this particular style done by the Jimmer was the one I was like, this makes sense. Because you've almost got the hollowed out center, and then if you need to convert this, quote unquote, convert it to a shent, it becomes very easy.
And that's where I went off on a tangent and I didn't make this point earlier. That's why I don't know what you termed, what the correct name for that crown is now, the one with the knob at the top. But that's why what Diodorus Siculus says about their kings have these felt robed crowns with a knob at the top. I never thought of it that way. I found it very hard to picture. I thought, that crown must have escaped all the attention of all these excavators, because I have not seen anything like that until you showed it in this video. Oh, of course, it's that he's describing. And if Diodorus Siculus saw this in person live, of course it's not a crown. Of course it's fabric waved around hair, because he's literally describing it for us. He's talking about these man are getting how much? 50 grand a year to get like some tenure in some university, and they haven't seen not. People need to get their money.
And
back.
also, just to add as well, Diodorus Siculus would have had no reference for what a crown was, because they didn't exist back then. That's another thing. Yeah, people have always got this kind of idea that crowns are these things that have always existed, and they're not. Once again, it was an African tradition. So Africans would have known what they were, but Diodorus Siculus, as a Mediterranean, as a European, he's got no reference to a crown. His ruler didn't wear one. The Romans wore, the most he's seen was a wreath around the head. So the whole idea of a king wearing a crown, this is a modern construct, and inheritance from Africa.
Right, I see what you're saying.
So to him, it was just a ruler wearing a hat, which is exactly what he said.
Press 1, chat. If you get that explanation, please press 1. Please, I need you to press 1 in the chat if you understand what he's just said there, because I've just had a eureka moment. Of course. And now that I think about it, you don't see crowns. Not tendentially anyway. Tendentiously, you don't see crowns in the depictions of people contemporaneous European civilizations at that time. You don't.
It's an it's an African phenomenon.
I'm pressing play. Just going to let that digest another 2 seconds. 1, 2, great.
Once again, it's easy to see how this style could be adorned with fabric and beads to create the famed crown of Lower Egypt, so often donned by rulers of the unified lands. A massive observable indication of crowns as an ethno-trichological phenomenon in Kemet is the shared continental culture of African headrests. Across the many cultures in Africa that adopt ethno-trichology as a common practice, the shared utility of African headrests can also be found. In fact, it becomes a necessity as a means to preserve these complicated styles. The African headrest can be found all over continental Africa, and this particular design, often but not exclusively a wooden head and neck support, hewn to form a curved rest and a base, is one that was shared by the ancient Egyptians, likely for the same purpose they have preserved to this day. Head and neck rests can be found among the Oromo, Guragai, Jimma, Somali, Swahili, Shona, Luba, Mfinu, Chokwe, Kagaru, Songye, Yaka, Dinka, Turkana, Luana, and Pokot, to name but a few ethnicities that practice this African tradition. It is stated by EgyptMuseum.com. Although it may seem uncomfortable, headrests are still widespread in some African cultures. The design is not the only feature that is shared, since they all share the same primary purpose, that is, to preserve the painstakingly crafted coiffures of the owners. These pieces play an intrinsic role amongst royalty and aristocracy, often linked to ancestry and hierarchy, preserved and
Just
passed
jump in
down.
there quickly.
Yes, King.
I think just on the point of headrests, after quite extensive research on the subject, I settled on the fact that their primary role was the preservation of crowns. And that's their primary role in Africa. You'll hear lots of stuff about, obviously, preventing bugs from getting your ear. And obviously, there's the benefits of realignment of the spine. But I think the primary role, the reason why you see this as a culture, a shared cultural continuity in Africa and not in other parts that were connecting to Africa, like the Mediterranean and places where they didn't practice ethnotrichology, is simply because they don't have the hairstyles to preserve. And it's a phenomenon that we still carry to this day.
Wow.
So
It makes sense. The headrest thing makes sense because once again, well, this video is gonna talk about this. I'm not gonna say anything.
Context as to why King Tutankhamun was buried with a vast amount of headrests. Not only would they have been used to preserve his complex trichological crown styles, but he may have inherited one or more as heirlooms. King Tutankhamun's wooden and ivory headrests pictured here were most likely utilized when his hair was in a complex style like that of the Kepresh. Logically speaking, as the king, if the crowns were not a trichological phenomenon, he would have no reason to have one, let alone a dozen headrests. Jan Summers even discloses details of a miniature headrest placed beneath the head of the mummy of Tutankhamun, likely used to keep his crown propped up within his golden mask. Although headrests are also adopted in the Far East and in Polynesia, within cultures that also practice forms of ethnotrichology, when referring to the vicinity of Europe, the Near East and Africa, ethnotrichological headrests are only found within the African continent amongst continental African ethnicities.
Wow.
So why is this important? Well,
Well, I'm gonna pause it there to say that's exactly what I was gonna. I was trying to drive at earlier, and I didn't want to take the oomph from the video. What you said there was that in itself. Again, what you're doing in this video is you're backing up what you're saying by, if it's not academic sources, it's by anthropological facts. You don't get headrests in all the thousands of years of European civilization, whatever. You don't get headrests as a thing that was used in these adjacent cultures in Europe and in the Near East. You get it firmly, though, on the continent of Africa. And why is that? Because, as you said, they're trying to preserve important structures to their hair.
exactly. There's a purpose. It's not just, oh yeah, we like to rest on pillows, we like to rest on. No, there's a purpose. Ethnotrichology plays a massive role, and therefore we needed to create the structure and create the tools to be able to preserve our ethnotrichological styles. It's that simple. It's not rocket science. You know, if you don't practice ethnotrichology, you have no reason to invent or even use a headrest.
Yeah, because of course they're uncomfortable. They're uncomfortable. You would rather just rest your head on something more cushioned. Anyway, I'll go on.
Zulu and continental African hair shaping traditions are properly researched and applied, then many of the mysteries relating to ancient Egypt begin to look, well, not so mysterious. Take, for instance, the beautiful children of Akhenaten and Nefertiti. For decades, the conversation about their peculiar head shapes has sparked speculation regarding the nature of their origin. Were we witnessing the hallmarks of African cranial deformation techniques, or evidence of an alien race? Perhaps surprisingly, I would argue quite possibly neither. First, the head-shaping principle, in my view, doesn't quite qualify because of the volume of the skulls depicted. In the available 3-dimensional and 2-dimensional art, the overall volume of the skulls seems too large to be a representation of cranial deformation, a practice that greatly affects the face and forehead. The overall lack of facial contortion doesn't quite reflect what we are presented with. So what do we have left? Well, if you'll allow me to ignore the asinine alien argument, a clue is given to us in the form of this cap crown worn by Nefertiti. Now, evidently colorless due to time and erosion, this once would have been a vibrant representation.
Yes, let's go.
I think these are they're in the Neues Museum as well. And it's been tampered, by the way, this work. You see all those scratches there? They've done that to kind of like alter the outside look of both their noses and their lips. So yeah, it's just something they do. I just thought I'd point out. But the reason
The scratches on the edge of the noses, you're saying?
Yeah, okay, you see the scratches in the middle?
Yeah.
But they're not on the face. And that's because they've been scratching away, trying to basically alter the appearance of the features. They're just bizarre people. You can see it. I've seen it close up. They've managed to kind of like erase some of the protrusion of the lips and stuff like that. But anyway, that's an aside. That's not the point I was making. The point I was going to make was that the hair here, okay, without the crown, and this was the kind of like the big eureka moment for me. If you remove the uraeus from Nefertiti here, you're just left with that head that looks like it's elongated.
Of
But with
course.
the uraeus there and the cap on, you realize this is just a hairstyle.
Right. Of
Now, if you
course.
transmit that idea into 3D, then you have a perfectly plausible explanation for those Armana princesses with the funny shaped heads.
I just was even looking at them prior to this video. I was looking at them as just pure dolichocephaly being portrayed, but of course they were dolichocephalic as well. That is to say, the typical African head shape of the elongated African head shape. But of course, there's that too, because that hair
Yeah.
can only rest in that shape on a dolichocephalic head.
Yeah, of course. I mean, dolichocephaly doesn't express itself that long, you know.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
just, there's dolichocephaly, and then there's, even with like Tut's, you know, I think we'll come on to it, you know, his head of Nefertim, you know, we know Tut's dolichocephalic, but I've actually done a comparison with his actual skull and the head of Nefertim, and you can see that the additional size and height that's placed on that is hair. 100. Well, I could almost say 100% is hair, or a depiction of Urugori hairstyle, basically.
Which we're gonna see. Well, we've seen bits of, but we're gonna see now.
Likely blue crown. In fact, if we observe an alternative bas relief of the same queen, but this time not wearing the uraeus diadem, you can see that her head looks no different in shape to how her children are depicted. And in the case of the children, since they did not rule and as such did not don the diadem, the only differentiating factor between where their forehead ends and hair begins would lie in the original color of the artwork, which in most cases has been entirely lost. In my view, these styles are not head shapes, but reflections of African ethnotrichology, like the aforementioned Urugori that contour and shape.
And that there, sorry, I've messed that up, but that there isn't an extremely dolichocephalic head. It's just the hair has been shaped in such a way as to make it like if you were going to represent that woman on a relief, it would have the same effect.
Exactly.
I've just skipped far ahead there, but I'm gonna press play.
Exactly.
But that's what you were saying.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, you've got Queen Rosalie there, last queen of Rwanda. And just very grateful, actually, to the Rwandan culture for teaching. Without that link that they gave us, even though it, you know, it hasn't managed to survive, unfortunately. Without that link they provided us, we maybe would have never found, you know, been able to make this link. It's just so, I don't know, man. I got quite emotional, particularly at this part.
Bro,
Yeah,
it
sorry.
hasn't died because these videos are a link to the past. If anybody say there was a nuclear bomb that dropped now and a few things survive, and I don't know, like these videos, what I'm trying to say is these videos are a time capsule. They actually preserve some of this stuff. So I want to make this point. As many as of us can do this, download these videos, download them so that you have them locally, so that we're not just depending on the internet to keep these things alive for our children. You need to download
Very
these
true.
videos
Good point.
because, and
Yeah.
it's just
Download my whole library, please, everyone.
yeah, I think it's very important to do that because you never know with the internet, and they do scrub things off the internet, or at least I think I showed one example of that in my video where you've got this map, this chart that shows Abu Bakr ibn Umar as a black man, blacker than black. And what's happened, what Google's now doing is somebody's gone and I don't know how you would do it because I'm not an expert with that, but in a cache somewhere they've made a white image of just some generic traveler in the Sahara on the same chart. They've made that image the image that comes up when you type in Abu Bakr ibn Umar now, where actually the image that should come up is the image that's labeled Abu Bakr ibn Umar, who was a Moorish general, and was black and was labeled on the same map Abu Bakr ibn Umar, not some generic traveler through the Sahara who's white skinned, but somebody's gone out of their way. That's not an accident. So Google's maybe
People are
Google's
disgusting, man. I tell you.
yeah, it's you can't help but be angry. You cannot help but look at
Yeah,
this and think, why? What's your
disgusting.
problem? Anyway,
But
so
this is part of the reason why I go on my kind of like rants, and I'm like, there's the answer to the answer to our situation, to speak in euphemisms, is never going to be an agreed middle ground.
no,
They're,
I
ne-
agree.
they're never gonna concede. That's the thing. So it's kind of like I've lost interest in making them concede. We just have to have all of our own structures and educational systems and
I agree.
access. I mean, like, forget Wikipedia. That's dead. That is run by the far right / Illuminati. Like, we are not gonna regain control of Wikipedia.
No.
Okay, so we just have to create our own repositories of information.
Yes.
And trust ourselves. It doesn't matter, essentially. Then they can carry on believing what they believe, and we'll believe what we believe, and it'll be all good.
Yeah.
You know, you have your version, we have ours. Cool.
I've said it before. The world copies us anyway. So eventually they'll come peeking what they're doing over there, and they can't help themselves. So whatever.
Yeah.
But someone said earlier on that these headrests are actually quite comfortable. I think that was maybe it was Daniel James
Yeah,
or
they are.
Nerd Lodge. So I stand corrected. I've not tried one myself, but yeah, I stand corrected on that. Right, I'm gonna press play.
And apparently they're very good for your spinal alignment. Just that.
Right. Huh. Maybe I need to get one. I got a few antiques around the house. I don't know.
I'm thinking about getting one. There's websites that sell them, like particularly the African ones. Some probably a reseller who goes there, but you can get even ones that are relatively quite dated and they're not that in context that you're buying an antique piece of Africa. They're actually quite a good price. 19th century one you get for like 300 quid.
Wow. Wow, amazing.
To the alleged head shapes of the Armana royal lineage, in particular Tutankhamun's head of Nefertim. Was this royal hairstyle what was actually being represented? Well, if this style is contextualized alongside the regional African trend of using red ochre and animal fats to coat and color the hair, such as seen in the Himba, Samburu, and Haima tribes of Eastern Africa, and also known to occur in ancient Egypt, then one can easily see how this could be mistaken for an elongated head when captured in stone portraiture. This single example proves why it is so important for African researchers to take the helm when it comes to research in ancient Kemet. The ability to link African cultural norms to practices in ancient Kemet will indeed provide the key to unlocking the hidden treasures of this ancient civilization. Thank you for joining me on The King's Monologue, a place where we are undeterred.
I'm just gonna stop it there, because
We made it, man.
Enough said. We made it, and I'm so grateful. Thank you so much, man. Thank you so much for doing that. Because I know you were itching as well. Like, I talk a lot, so I'm sorry. So we did make it.
No,
We
not
did
at
make
all.
it.
I talk a lot myself.
Wow. But guys, you have just witnessed. I know some people have just been mentioning early on that the sound on the video was a bit low. I hope that got better as we went on. It doesn't seem to have been a major problem because people didn't complain about that after a while anymore. But if you want to, in your own time, if you've not seen this video yet, I doubt that's true of anybody in the chat right now. But if you've not seen this video yet, it's worth actually watching without any interruptions and taking in what this video is about and what the stuff documented in it, it actually is worth it. It's one of the things that should be. It's got 70,000 views now. It should be 7 million. The world should see this. The world should, because everybody in the comments unanimously is saying, almost unanimously anyway, apart from a few trolls here and there, are saying this is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And I want to thank the King for joining me in this live. This doesn't end here. This we could have kept talking about. There's so much we've not touched on. In fact, I'm gonna give you the last 5 minutes of whatever. Just if there's anything that you want to add, King, I'll let you do that, and then I will just end it, because right now in the UK we are 12:40 midnight. I don't know what time that would be in America, but we got a lot of our listeners out there in America. So, but it's 12:40. It's midnight for us here, so we're both very tired. I'm gonna give the floor to the King to add anything, if there's anything that he's not that he wants to add, and then I'm just gonna end the stream and say thank you all so much for joining us. King, over to you.
Now, I am thoroughly exhausted, so I'm happy to call it a day. But thank you for inviting me on the channel. But actually really enjoyed the chat with you. And like I said, I'm a big fan also as well. Anyone who's out there, trying to help us to, not just, I would say, educate our people, but also I think we're doing more than that. I think we're kind of establishing our own educational resources and protocols. I spoke to you very early. I think before the call actually started, we spoke about the need to produce papers and stuff like that. In many ways, what we're doing here is a lot of trailblazing. So I appreciate you. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun. Thank everyone for coming as well. Everyone on the live, some people really loyal. So appreciate you all.
Thank you so much, King. Thank you for joining us. Thank you, everybody who's been in the chat. Wildflower, ABC, Nerd Large, the Bonker, all of you. Thank you so much. Black Rampage too. Thank you all for joining us. It's been amazing. There's going to be a part 2 to this where I will look at stuff from the King, other things that we've not gone into tonight, stuff from his channel, and other stuff that I looked into just before this video, but obviously because of time we couldn't look into it. But there will be a part 2. I very quickly realized there would have to be a part 2 to this. It's such a big topic. So have a look out. Keep your eyes out peeled for the part 2 to this. Thank you, King, for joining me on this live. I'm gonna end the stream right now. If you just hang on, King, I'll just say a few things to you on the back end of this. Thank you, everyone. Peace out.